It's time for Twig This Week in Google. Stacy and Ant have the week off, but we've got a great fill-in team. Kathy Gellis is here, and for the first time ever, I can't believe it, Glenn Fleischman, Jeff Jarvis. Of course, what are we going to talk about? Elon Musk and Twitter. We'll talk about Google's quarterly results. They were a disappointment to Wall Street, but should Google be fretting? And a little bit of typesetting nerdery. It's all coming up next on Twig.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twig.
This is Twig, This Week in Google, episode 661, recorded Wednesday, April 27th, 2022. Oligarchs at the Gate. This episode of This Week in Google is brought to you by Codecademy. Join over 50 million people learning to code with Codecademy and see where coding can take you. Get 15% off your Codecademy Pro membership when you go to codecademy.com and use the promo code TWIG. And by Our Crowd. Our Crowd helps accredited investors invest early in pre-IPO companies alongside professional venture capitalists. Join the fastest growing venture capital investment community at ourcrowd.com/twig. And by 8 Sleep. Good sleep is the ultimate game changer and nature's best medicine. Go to 8sleep.com/twig to check out the Pod Pro cover and save $150 at checkout. 8 Sleep currently ships within the U.S., Canada, and the U.K. It's time for Twig This Week in Google, which this week will not be about Google in any way, shape, or form. As you might imagine, there is another topic on the table. Now, Ant Pruitt is out for the week. He's going to watch his kids at a track meet. Stacy is under the weather, so we have some special guests, and we're thrilled about it. But first, let me introduce one of our stalwarts, the guy who's been here since day one, Mr. Jeff Jarvis.
I show up. I just want to know that I show up. He wants to get rid of me, but he can't.
I can't.
I'm the bad
I keep
penny
trying.
that's always on this podcast.
He is the Leonard Tao Professor for Journalistic Innovation at the Crane Newmark Graduate School of Journalism.
New one.
That was a new one. Let's do that again. That was pretty.
Ooh.
Yeah. Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York. If you were a billionaire, you could have your name sung as well. Thank you very much for being here. Now, let's introduce the rest of our panel. I feel like it's a game show. Let's meet the rest of our panel. Kathy Gellis is here. She's been here before. She's an author at Tech Dirt and, of course, specializes in cyber law at cgcouncil.com. Hi, Kathy. Thank you for joining us on short notice. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So nice to have you.
And on even shorter
notice, Glenn Fleischman is also here. Glenn.fun. I love that, Glenn.
It's my new easy to spell URL as opposed to my previous hard to spell ones. I was just sitting. I'm always ready to go online, apparently, and I just fired up the microphone.
I can tell you have a real microphone. You got the headphones. You're set. You, of course, have heard him on The Incomparable. He's been a longtime writer for Macworld and Man About Town. And I think this is nice because I know we're going to be talking about Twitter, but I'd like to get a variety of viewpoints on here. I did ask, and he couldn't do it, and I wish he could, Siva Vaidyanathan, because Siva, who is also a professor of journalism, but across town, wrote a piece in Slate called there is a reason no smart buyer there's no reason a smart buyer has not purchased Twitter. There's a reason no smart buy. It's too many negatives. Anyway, there's a reason no one's bought Twitter so far. He says Elon Musk is going to lose his shirt. The first thing I want to say before we get into this heavy conversation, obviously you know the news. Elon Musk succeeded where all else have failed in buying Twitter for $44 billion, most of it borrowed against Tesla stock, which immediately caused him to lose a significant amount of his personal fortune when Tesla stock plummeted in value $100 billion because the market said, oh, he's going to screw this one up. He will not take over Twitter until regulatory approval, about 6 months. Of course, there's a lot going on. There is a $1 billion kill fee if either Elon or Twitter backs out of the deal, a significant, I think, penalty. And of course, there are a lot of questions about what Elon is going to do with Twitter. There are a number of people, some of them very high profile, who have run screaming from the building. There are a number of others like me who just say, well, let's see. But I think there is legitimate cause for concern. One cause for concern, Kathy, is right up your alley, which is the privacy cause for concern. Elon suddenly owns outright, he's taking it private, everything that Twitter knows about you and me and everybody else on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, that is kind of the setup of how we do our platforms, that in theory, somebody owns stuff. And I mean, but it didn't feel quite as objectionable when it was either owned by a private entity that you chose to do business with anyway, or then a public entity that's still subject to certain forms of regulatory rules about what they can or can't do. This feels weird.
It's kind of the worst case scenario where you give a lot of information to somebody. You know, you read their privacy policy, you say, well, that's okay, it's publicly held, they can't lie. Okay, I'm going to trust them. And then they sell it. And all bets are off, right? There's no agreement. There's no privacy agreement between us and Twitter anymore. It's whatever Elon wants to do.
Well, I thought different things would get sold. Like, I always understand that when companies write their privacy policies, they do sort of tend to put, we may sell it. But I've always thought of it in terms of sort of end gleaning of data that they've learned about people that they will potentially give to vendors or something like that. And a lot of people object to that. There are concerns, but that seemed like the normal vector of where I'd expect the privacy to go. This is a little bit different because he can in theory see our well, not yet, this hasn't happened, but if he all of a sudden steps into the ownership shoes, he can see all the direct messages that aren't encrypted. He has all the information that otherwise governments try to subpoena or private parties try to subpoena. In theory, that's all available to him. And this is a huge problem for Twitter has been very aggressive in litigating the privacy of its anonymous speakers, and all of a sudden there's a gigantic vector of people they were hiding from now own the information that would tell them who they are. That's weird, and weird in a really terrible, scary way.
There's also the issue of what Elon has said he will do with Twitter. And your colleague at TechDirt, Mike Masnick, wrote that his statements to Chris Anderson at the TED Talk last week demonstrated a complete lack of understanding of what the First Amendment meant, what the algorithm meant. The whole thing is basically a mass of ignorance. Before I get to Jeff, because I know Jeff, I think you're the one with his hair on fire, but we'll check. I want to ask Glenn because I don't know what you have, unlike everybody else, not posted 1,000 articles on this. What is your opinion of the future of Twitter going forward under an Elon Musk?
I just think it's I think it's a potentially devastating move because I don't think his interests align with the majority of people who use the platform. I don't think Twitter really knows what it is. I mean, what is Twitter? Mm-hmm. It's billed as a microblogging service, which is a term that means almost nothing because there's kind of only one microblogging service that people use to, in any large amount. There are some far right ones that have gotten a little bit of traction, but not a lot compared to it. So it's this unique entity. It stands in opposition or distinct from Facebook. They haven't quite ever figured out what to do that's not just this very narrow set of options. I love constraints, so I think it's done very well with that, but they don't effectively moderate the platform, even though they've put in a lot more safeguards and a lot more, they've made a lot more attempts to make it like fair and or fairer for people, less abusive, and to label political content and try to keep the commons a little clearer. But it's a very complicated operation with a single line of revenue essentially from advertising. And Musk says he doesn't care about the business basics, but then he structured a deal that's going to put him on the hook for a lot of personal interest payments, and Twitter leveraged for payments it's going to have to make. So it can't just turn off he could turn off the revenue pipe, or advertisers could flee if it's ruined and it's not a good place to put your ads for cars and credit cards and Squarespace and whoever else up on it. But then he's got to take money from his personal fortune to cover that. So I don't think he knows what he wants to do with it because his statements are both vague and contradictory, which is the best kind, right?
I was, all last week I was saying, Elon doesn't want to buy Twitter. This is Elon trolling. Yeah. Elon's not that crazy. The last thing he ever wanted was to do this. In fact, this could well be just pump and dump. He wants the price to go up so he can make $1 billion on his investment, things like that. I was so wrong. Elon told Chris Anderson, and this was before he got Twitter, but after he offered to buy it, I think it's really important for there to be I'm quoting him now, an inclusive arena for free speech. Twitter has become the de facto town square. So that's how he sees it. So it's really important that people have both the reality and perception. They're able to speak freely within the bounds of the law. Then he says, as Mike Masnick points out, something completely contradictory,
Yes.
which is, as long as it doesn't break the law, it's free speech, but no spam, which is protected by law as free speech.
And people have brought up the fact that, the instant any service that's unmoderated in the modern age, the immediate
it's
thing that
8chan.
happens, it's you get CSAM, you get child sexualized.
Yeah, you get 4chan and 8chan.
Yeah.
You get garbage. No advertiser would want and no user would want.
You have to filter out spam, you have to filter out child pornography, and you have to filter out, revenge porn. You have to filter out huge quantities of things have to be actively moderated just as a starting point so you don't violate the law in most countries on the planet.
He also says he wants to open the algorithm. It's funny. The stuff he said, when on first reading, I'm going, free speech, open the algorithm, But then after you just consider for a second, or you realize, well, you open the algorithm, who takes advantage of that? Spammers. They game the system. They know how to get something at the top of the list. Great. You've done, this is exactly why Google does not open its algorithm, because otherwise it gets gamed like crazy. That's a very risky thing to do. Masnick's point, which I think is very well taken, is that Elon's saying a lot of things that the original founders of Twitter and all of Silicon Valley espoused 15, 20 years ago, but have learned the hard way doesn't work. And so they've learned that to make a good space, you have to moderate, you have to have rules. And Masnick's saying Elon's just going to throw out 15 years of learning, 15 years of hard-won moderation and start from scratch without any real plan for what to do. All right. I've been really doing this to drive you crazy, Jeff. And you've been really good about not saying anything. Jeff Jarvis, what do you think?
I don't know what I think. I think it's wrong to guess what he's going to do because we don't know, because he doesn't know what he's going to do. That's obvious.
Although you might say that that's potentially problematic.
Oh, it is.
He spent $44 billion on something you don't know what you're going to do with it.
I know what his
he
people
found it in the couch cushions. It's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
I'm going to buy this ice cream cone. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
So I saw what Twitter is going to be like last week when I put up my tweet, and for 36 hours until they got bored with me and went after Taylor Lorenz or somebody else, the Muscovites came after me.
He has his own army of bots, human or not.
Absolutely. They're bots with heartbeats. Yeah, and so it was Andrew Sullivan and Glenn Greenwald and Fox News, and they all came after me. And they think they're clever, but they're not. And so it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then squirrel, they go away and they go to the next thing. So I think I'm trying to look at this as a business story first. I care more about the speech. I care more what's going to happen. But I'm just trying to get my head around that in a few ways. One, the interest rates have to be awful. This is a leveraged buyout, $44 billion. The cash flow is not that great. It's leveraged against Tesla stock, which is volatile. Twitter is not a great venture to start off with. So I've got to believe that he won't be screaming about free speech. He'll be screaming about free cash flow to his managers.
I want to plus one what Jeff is saying. This is absolutely a corporate law story. It's where the interest is. The release of the merger deal is where the really interesting stuff is. Like, this is one of the things that's been a problem, and I'm sorry I cut you off, Jeff, is in this whole space about online speech, we've been just paying all this attention, oversized attention to free speech, Section 230, blah, 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 and ignoring everything else that happens to shape the space, including corporate law has been a gigantic voice that shapes things. Because why is it that companies act the way they do? That matters. Like, we have whole bodies of law that force companies to act in certain ways or give them certain liberties or take away their discretion. We create incentives, and then we wonder why companies act consistent with those incentives. You're absolutely right that this is the story. It's always been the story, but it's getting ignored. We never get the analysis of it.
So, Kathy, beyond that, beyond the law piece, which I absolutely agree with, and it's a smart way you would look at it as I would expect, there's also just the business part of Musk. And I've been thinking that through. I got into it with Om Malik in Twitter, where he was I don't know, he was defending Musk's business intelligence. And it made me think, and I thought, okay, so fine, Tesla, world's richest man, would seem on its face that he's the most brilliant businessman we have. But Leo, you used to own a Tesla, and now you own a Mustang, and every single car company out there is making alternatives to Tesla. I don't think that's a growth stock, one. Two, SpaceX, fine, he can make some money, shuttling back Russians and whoever into space, but that's not a huge business. Three, nobody wants holes in the ground, sorry. Four, whatever happened to Hyperloop. Five, Starlink, okay, but the government is what gave him money for Ukraine when he's trying to take credit. I don't know that he's so brilliant at this, but I think he is smart enough to know this. And this is when he's sowing all his oats. This is when he's going to have the most fun he can possibly have. And he's responsible to no one, and he's doing what he's doing. But it's disturbing because I was talking to a reporter today from the Christian Science Monitor, and I said, people built their communities here. So I quote on the show often Andre Brock Jr., who wrote Distributed Blackness. And his spirit is, you're not kicking me off of here. We work to make this place, we're making this ours. And Charlotte Clymer, who's a brilliant ex-evangelical trans activist on Twitter. And she said the same thing. And so what happened here was that Musk can buy the company, but he can't buy the communities. He can try to screw it up, but it's kind of past him now. And I don't know what he's really going to get out of it in the end, except a bunch of attention, a bunch of fun, a bunch of trolling. He's going to get bored, and then it could be sold for pieces to private equity or something else. And it's just not a happy place. All of this is to say that I wish, and I see Dorsey kind of sucking up to Musk, and I think it could be because they get along, and that's fine. But I also think it's because Jack wants Blue Sky to happen, and he doesn't want to mess that up, because that is the only answer I see going forward is speech as protocol, which is what original investor in Twitter, Fred Wilson, has been talking about alongside Jack. And then we build value-added layers on top of that, like WordPress.org or .com on top of .org. So I hope there's a functionality to go forward. I looked at Mastodon, and there's nothing there. I don't know where else we go, so I think we fight for where we are, hope we survive this era, and then rebuild from there and build something better in the future.
So I don't think you needed me on the show because I just agree with everything that Jeff said. So just insert my thoughts there. But I think that's right. That's the right analysis. One thing I'm missing from the reporting is timescale, because the headlines were all kind of like, as of Monday, he owned it. And even I was like falling for that. I'm like, oh my gosh, this was so quick. And then like I got my like corporate law hat on and stuff and started thinking about like, no, it can't possibly be like that. And so the headlines were bad. And I think the reporting, I'd actually like to see some good reporting, and maybe it's out there and I haven't seen it, but what is the time scale? What are the things that need to happen? Because I know some of this. There's going to be due diligence. Meanwhile, there's a non-disparagement clause that Musk appears to be violating like every 5 minutes.
I don't want to interrupt you, but there is going to be no due diligence. Actually, they basically waived due diligence, which is, it's like buying a house. There's rats in the wall, and you're like, it's fine. Yeah. So, but they, so it means that won't, but there'll be the shareholder vote. There's a lot of
shareholders. There's also regulatory, Kathy, isn't there? So, who is this?
FTC has to.
Is this FTC? Does the
don't
FCC
know.
weigh in on this? I don't think so.
SEC?
But what about the
SEC?
SEC? By the way, Elon did lose a court case today. The judge ruled that...
Did he lose it?
Yeah. The judge ruled
he did.
that, no, the SEC is right. You were not coerced in this agreement. And this is going to be interesting. Elon Musk, when he owns Twitter, will still have to, according to the SEC, get lawyers to approve every tweet.
So I think the bottom line is it isn't supposed to work this way. And a question I have that I'd like to see more analysis on is did we not have law that adequately anticipated this, or do we have law that did sort of anticipate this that isn't executing? Like there's at least little scofflaws that he's ended up with, him buying the 10% and not filing the form on time. So there's a number of things that there was law that technically existed that didn't seem to be a barrier, or both of some form. And the problem is I think the people who know this and understand this have not been at our discussion table for a while, and I'm really annoyed. I have to dig up my notes from my corporate law class because I thought I was done with all that. And but I think that's where the story is, because now we're talking about the question's just gone to, is this an anti-competitive problem? I feel like the answer is yes, because we only had a couple major platforms, and he came with his billions of dollars, and instead of investing in another one, he consumed one that already existed, and in a way that's likely to be deleterious to its further existence. So the question is, how legal is that? But that's not the way that when they've been talking about big tech regulation and break up big tech, this wasn't the vector of attack that they were anticipating.
Lena Khan has not written a paper on what happens when an oligarch buys Twitter.
Right,
Yeah,
and this is a bigger problem than the mergers, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I want to bring up the China situation too, which is that Elon Musk is heavily beholden to China, and I never want to sound like some kind of either Chinese conspiracy theorist or anti-Chinese, because China's too complicated to summarize in a sentence, right? There's you need several books or a lifetime, but we know what China requires of companies that do business in there. We know how they don't operate by democratic norms or business norms. When they think something has to happen, they'll arrest the richest person in the country, they'll shut things down, they'll take the most popular actress off the streets and disappear her for months and so forth. So there's no question that China will do whatever's in China's interests, and because Musk is so beholden for manufacturing and other issues in China, even though Twitter isn't technically allowed in China, what will the effect be, given that Chinese diplomats on Twitter are marked as being associated with the Chinese government, can be subject to suppression and so forth, or fact checking? I have huge concerns that there's Facebook isn't beholden to China, Apple is in a lot of ways, and Musk is.
There is a great piece by Pete Sweeney and Reuters, breaking views. Elon Musk buys Tesla, a pounding Chinese headache. And this is going to be a really interesting clash, because
that's a good point, Glenn.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, Elon's building Teslas in China. Elon wants to stay on the best side of the Chinese Communist Party.
It's not just China. It's going to be countries around the world.
Yeah.
You have Europe coming after him already, saying, "Whoa, you think you're not going to moderate anything? No, we got laws over here. We got NetsDG. We got all this stuff. You're going to be doing that." And then today, right before airtime, Elon's latest dumber and dumber tweet was, and I quote, "For Twitter to deserve public trust, it must be politically neutral," which effectively means upsetting the far right and the far left equally.
In the U.S., that might make sense.
Oh, but then Steve
it's a global country.
Steve said, what's politically
company.
neutral in Mexico, in
Right.
Nicaragua, in Sri Lanka? Right. Have fun, Elon. It's a big, weird, mean world out there. Your simplistic vision is in for a wild time.
Also,
And
Kevin
that's the
Marks
problem.
says, upsetness is not a metric to run a company on. It's also not something you want to incentivize. Yeah. So let's upset everybody. That's my biggest fear, because I think everybody on this panel think Twitter has some value, maybe less than most, but I do think it does have some value. And I don't see any way that Elon makes Twitter better in any respect.
No, good point. Good point. Well said.
No, it'd be great if he would, but I'm viewing Twitter right now as if it's like Russia after the Ukrainian invasion, as people are wondering how quickly they can get out of the company.
Well, I have to say, we have a 362% spike on our Mastodon instance. Not like 100 people or anything, but it's still there are. I today approved 29 new members at twit.social because we have, this is the login, but we do have our own Mastodon instance, which I will now log into, and apparently not on this machine.
So I have this whole story is engendering me with a lot of ennui because for a couple reasons. One is that we just discussed, like, Musk is wandering into an area where he's acting like, at last, somebody is here to do the big thinking that has been neglected all this time. And I'm sorry, no, these issues are a lot more complex and hard, and a lot of really good, decent, talented, smart people have been thinking about them for quite some time. But quite frankly, his nonsense is very similar to regulatory nonsense. If they walk in and say, at last, a big thinker is here to solve all the problems, it's like, no, the reason the problems weren't getting solved is partly because they're rather difficult and intractable, and partly because idiots keep showing up and pretending that at last they are the expert who has come into the room to solve all the problems. So this is almost boring to me because it's kind of the same old, and it's like, I don't really like him or anything he promises to do, but I see regulations coming out of Congress that are like almost equally as violent and equally ill-rooted in any sort of foundational reality.
They're going to get worse. The regulations are going to get worse because of this kind of crap.
So I am hoping, I want to be, mostly so I can get up every morning, I want to be more optimistic about this and see this as a chance for opportunity. And I think it does present a few. I think, one of the things rhetorically that kind of makes it interesting is there's been a lot of difficulty in people understanding how platform moderation is really a First Amendment protected activity because people don't recognize it when that editorial discretion is in the hands of a company, particularly a platform company. But it's easier to see when it's an individual because you can see it for yourself. Like, what are the comments you allow on your Facebook post? Obviously, if somebody insults your kid and calls them ugly, you're going to delete that. And people would understand intuitively that, of course, you have the First Amendment right to make that decision. So we tend to see those decisions as First Amendment protected when they're manifest in the individual and lose sight of them when they're in the company. So I'm kind of hoping rhetorically to point out that, okay, now it's back in the hands of the individual. This is all on Musk. You can see how he's making these choices, and hopefully that maybe we can see how he would have the right to make the decisions, even though he's going to make them really badly because he's rejecting all this prior knowledge. So I don't know. And then I don't know. I just I want new Twitter. I want all the good people and all the good money to flee immediately and go start something new and better and leave him to his floundering thing. And I want that to happen as soon as possible, except I am also really intrigued, and back to the corporate law thing, I want to understand this dynamic better because I want to understand how likely it is and on what time scale that this transaction actually closes. And let's get the popcorn because I don't know if it's quite as much of a slam dunk as it's being reported, but I don't have the knowledge to quite key that out.
What are the odds this deal closes?
Well, I was going to ask Kathy that the time frame I've seen quoted is 6 months. I think that was the New York Times.
Yes.
Do you think why wouldn't it close? He doesn't own any competing social networks.
I want to understand that a little bit better. And Glenn may actually have some answers. So.
Well, I don't know. I have things I can make up. Is that I've studied.
This isn't Twitter. We don't need your hot take here.
That's right. So let me give you a cooler take. I imagine many people listening to this and on this panel read Matt Levine, who is at Bloomberg, who has a great free newsletter, and he's great because he does all the hard work for you, right? And when you pick apart the deal, and also I've been following people on Twitter who have picked apart the deal's term and what the agreement was that was signed. And Musk he's both highly leveraged and not so much, but I see a scenario in which if Tesla shareholders, there's a weird thing, which is the major shareholders of Tesla, if you look at the 10 biggest ones, there is a strong overlap with the top 10 shareholders of Twitter. It includes, like Fidelity and Blackstone and Vanguard, most of which, they're holding this in mutual funds and index funds and so forth. But still, it's kind of weird that the two companies share so many major shareholders and that the board clearly solicited their opinion before they went ahead. So these major shareholders who then now own stakes in Tesla that dropped a significant amount because the market as a whole responded so negatively. So one thing that could happen is that Tesla could keep getting hit. They could have some, they've been doing incredibly well. We saw the earnings this week, right? They've done incredibly well. They've executed extremely well. There's lots of complaints about the cars that get circulation. But if they have a bad quarter in in the next 2 quarters, or the stock continues to fall because people don't have the trust in it. And suddenly he's already got personal guarantees against chunks of his Tesla stock. He'd have to exercise options. The banks could require higher margins. He's putting up $20-something billion of his, quote unquote, own money, like cash, but he may syndicate some of that. And
there's some big question about where that cash comes from.
Where's that coming from? Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's guaranteed the way the deal was signed because there's no due diligence. There's very few conditions apparently under which he can back out without having to pay that. Was it about $1 billion, right?
$1 billion.
So I've got Matt Levine's column here, and by the way, his lead is, I guess it's worth saying, Elon Musk does not own Twitter. He did not buy Twitter. He did sign an agreement to buy Twitter. That's a big step, and he probably he says will own it in some amount of time, maybe 6 months. Here is the timeline that he talks about, and I think Levine probably knows better, or as well as anybody, what's going to happen.
He's been covering this so closely, too, because it's a great intersection. You have a company with reasonable value, although not, Twitter's valuation. We're talking a lot about a company worth under $50 billion, or valued at that now, where there are multi-trillion-dollar companies in the world right now, and Twitter somehow manages, because media people like us are so interested in it, and because
we're going to spend a whole show talking about it.
And it's there's companies that are what is it? I can't do the math. 400 times larger that probably get less attention. Microsoft is very boring compared to Twitter.
Well,
right?
for instance, I guess at some point we might spend a minute or two on Google's quarterly report, which came out yesterday. This is This Week in Google, and what are we talking about? Twitter occupies the imagination. So here's the Levine timeline. Twitter, most notably, Twitter's shareholders will have to vote on the deal. Twitter will have to write a proxy statement explaining the deal, run it by the SEC, send it to shareholders, give them some time to read it before voting. That alone, those things may take months. Then there are regulatory approvals that they have to get before closing the deal. When the deal closes, he'll have to have the money. You don't have to be able to write a check, right? He doesn't, just because he's got those agreements doesn't mean he has the money yet, okay? So and as Kathy
could
pointed out,
someone else come along at any point in this process and put in a higher bid?
I think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think they had.
Why would anybody, as Siva says, Twitter's been available for some time.
If you were Microsoft, would you buy it right now?
No.
I mean, would you?
No. For the very
I don't
reasons we're talking about.
I don't think if I were a sensible institutional investor, I don't want to completely throw Twitter completely under the bus because I think there is value there. But
but nobody has figured out how to make
investment.
Nobody's figured out how to make money on Twitter.
But I think the people is like, the next oligarch billionaire who is bored and wants to go toe-to-toe with Elon Musk. I mean, I could easily see a play there, and there were like weird tweets from Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, what about
Bezos?
Like the white knight who rides in and says, you know what, I can't let this happen. I'm just going to lay out some of my own cash.
And he's been a good Washington Post owner. Excellent Washington Post owner.
I mean, I would rather have that billionaire than this billionaire. But
Levine says the next
I please
thing,
live in a world where that's not my choice.
The next thing that will happen is a proxy statement will have to be filed within the next few weeks. Levine says, watch the proxy statement. It will be interesting. One interesting part will be the, quote, background of the merger section, describing the history of the negotiations.
Elon took out his doobie, and then...
Probably some mention will be made of various tweets. Probably the lawyers will have to finesse a bit about how Musk characterized his Twitter stake as a passive investment with, I didn't realize he tweeted this April 4th, with no intention to change control of the company.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then made a takeover offer saying 9 days later, it's simply...
And it's still the case that he made the money by not revealing the deal.
I mean, I'm really uncomfortable with this because whether anybody should be a billionaire is an open question, but it sort of seems like small little technical indiscretions which exist in the law for reasons in order to make things fair and give everybody a fair shake, all of a sudden don't count. They don't really apply to you. And I don't know, it's just a form of lawlessness that really makes me I feel like things fall apart when rules don't matter. And it's not that I'm a huge law and order person. I like mercy. I like a certain degree of discretion, and some of our laws are just dumb, but I kind of don't think they're all dumb. And it's sort of nice to know that they help level the playing field, because it means every single person sort of has equal protection under the law. And this isn't. If all of a sudden like, oh, well, just has so much inertia, we can't really stop it, like too big to fail. Like it doesn't feel fair for everybody else who's left.
Kathy, don't you think this boils down to, or I shouldn't say it boils down to, but one of the reasons we have so much discomfort with Elon Musk is that he exposes the way in which somebody who is like a Trump, who's completely shameless and uninterested in worrying about what the law is. He's more eager to take action, and then often is able through money or luck or whatever to escape the consequences. So the pedo guy lawsuit that turned on some interesting technicalities, but he was able to make that statement and then defend it and then essentially prevail in court in a way that seemed implausible. And if he were a person with more shame, he would never have said it, or he would have settled. If he were a person with less money, he would have been required to settle, or maybe not had the representation that would allow him to win. And it feels like the same issue with all the SEC enforcement actions.
That's the lesson of the last 5 years, is that we don't know how to handle somebody who's willing to dash norms. We don't. And how much we rely on norms, not laws, not regulations, but norms to get people to behave. And that once people are willing to say, screw the norms,
and then troops follow behind them to do the same.
Wow. The law in Finland, if you speed in Finland, your traffic fine is proportionate to your earnings. And I thought we need a law like that for various kinds of financial and other crimes in America. If you had to pay something that actually hurt you in the same way that a traffic fine did in Finland, maybe it would change behavior.
Yeah, $20 million, which is Elon's fine for that tweet. Somebody did the calculation based on his net worth, is about the equivalent of a small fry at McDonald's to the rest of us. It is a tiny fraction of his income. You mentioned, Jeff, that unaccountably Jack Dorsey was all in on this. Dick Costolo, who was the former CEO of Twitter and is quite bruised from his battles leading that company, tweeted 2 hours ago, "Bullying is not leadership." 2 days ago, he tweeted, "Shout out to the writers' room at Silicon Valley for tonight's wild episode."
Comedy writer Dick. I think the other thing is, I think the board. So I buy a few shares of company here and there so I can get notices and everything. So I bought a few shares in my 401k for Twitter quite a while ago.
Oh, you're going to get one of these proxies.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I do it, so I can get that stuff. And so as a shareholder, the board violated its fiduciary responsibility to me. They should have shopped this thing around. They should have said, "Fine, you want to do a tender offer? Go fight for it. Good luck." They should have fought for the company, and they just caved.
That's another
I am wondering
section of
about
the
that,
proxy is the opinion of Twitter financial advisors, again Matt Levine, which will describe the fairness opinion that Twitter's board got from its bankers concerning the price. He says, "I think it was probably not too hard for the banks to reach that conclusion."
It was $69 late last year.
Right. The question was, what were the prospects for Twitter? Levine says, "I joked yesterday the bankers would have to tweak the model until it makes a horrible clattering noise and bolts start popping off to get to a 54.20 valuation for Twitter." So, in other words, I don't think they have too much difficulty justifying accepting the offer. But you're right; they didn't do any. Nobody's doing any.
I just think it's really quick.
Yeah.
But the problem is,
Yeah, they said we're going to do a poison pill, and then 36 hours later, okay, we give up.
That narrative doesn't quite. There's a panic in this, and the stakes are too high for the speed that everything is happening, where matters of huge consequences are all of a sudden. Because the problem is if this deal fails, either because, I don't know, for whatever reason it fails, what have we done? What has just happened? I mean, people's livelihoods are currently like hanging in the balance. People are already shopping resumes because how can they kind of sensibly not? And, even if they want to stay and fight, like, what are we going to see? I almost wonder if that actually it's worth the $1 billion to him just to mess up this company. And he's vandalized it essentially already, where we've already seen depletion. And oh my gosh, what a shame. And that really isn't something that should have happened. Now, I don't know how we forestall it necessarily, but I'm sorry?
Sorry about that. He also schmutzed the concept of free speech. So like all things.
Okay, hold that thought. Hold that thought, because we've been talking about the corporate law aspect, but let's talk about some other aspects of governance, we got to take a break. But it's just a great conversation. Kathy Gillis, thank you so much for joining us. I know you got to go in about half an hour, so we're gonna get all the good stuff in here. Jeff Jarvis, you're stuck with me. Stay here. You
and
can't
vice
move.
versa. Yeah.
Glenn Fleischman. Hey, I wanted to get you on forever. I am looking at the quality of your video. I am looking at the quality of your microphone.
Books.
Room Rater is giving you 5 out of 5, not just for the books. 10 out of 10, but not just for the books, but for the black and white photo of people gazing in awe at what looks like the original iPhone over your left shoulder, and the Steve Jobs time cover.
No, it's Ted Turner.
Ted Turner.
Appropriate for the CNN.
Perfect.
I worked
and
on
his mini type library on his shelf behind him over his right
I see
shoulder.
that. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Also, tiny linotype over there.
I think I get the better compliment because he's willing to put up with me and my crappy Wi-Fi and terrible camera.
That's true. It's easy to have. It's easy to have Glenn on.
I have to meet this standard if I'm gonna.
Although our personal room rater here said points off for the electrical tape holding your microphone onto the microphone stand. We got to work on that. We got to work on that.
Put some green screen on that. It'll disappear.
Anyway, thrilled to have all three of you. This conversation will continue. Yes, we will get to Google's quarterly report. Maybe.
Eventually.
There will be no change log, though. I'm going to have to draw a line here somewhere.
The change log, by the way, really sucks today. So you don't want it, folks. There's nothing in it.
Glenn and Kathy probably don't know this, but this used to be a show about Google. And in order to kind of pay lip service to its origin and name, we do every episode something called the Google changelog, which is new stuff from Google. And it's gotten worse and worse and worse over the years. And at this point, it's just a litany of depressing nonsense.
I was almost going to put in there a story about how Google was making it easier to find some commands in docs. And I thought, no, even Leo can't do this.
No, even I refuse. I do want to talk about somebody I'm very happy to talk about, and it's Codecademy. These guys are really, really great. A way to learn to code. 50 million people are learning to code at Codecademy. And if you want to change your career, there has never been a better time to become a programmer. There's a huge need, a demand for programmers. And as you probably noticed, it's a great job. Great starting pay, huge, exciting opportunities all over the country, all over the world. And with Codecademy, you can learn to code on your own terms. 50 million people already know Codecademy is the best way to learn to code, because Codecademy not only teaches you job-ready coding skills, but also helps you build unique projects. That's important for your portfolio. Companies will judge you on your GitHub projects. You can earn certificates, great for putting on your LinkedIn page. You can even prep for technical interviews, so you'll be ready to get that job as soon as you complete it. It couldn't be a better time, really, to find a new job. Not a crap job. If you recently quit, if you're part of the Great Resignation, now's the time to take some time and learn to code. With Codecademy, it's so fun, and I've done this. I've taken their Python courses. It's nice because as soon as you start coding at Codecademy, day one, you'll be writing real code. It's an interactive platform. You're actually getting instant feedback because your code is tested as soon as you submit it, even with the very first lesson. So you always know if you're on the right track. And there's something, anybody who's learned to code knows that the very first time a computer does what you told it to do it's an epiphany. It's such an amazing thing, and it powers most of us who like to code, has powered us ever since. So you'll get that magic moment where you hit the submit button and it goes, yeah, and it does what you said it to. Oh, it's incredible. You'll be learning at your own pace in an area that you want. In fact, one of the best things about Codecademy, before you even start, they have a programming personality quiz. Not math questions, not technical questions, but more about you, the stuff that makes you excited, the stuff you enjoy doing. I took it. It said, you should take our computer science, track. Lisa, my wife, did it. She's our CEO and CFO and longtime numbers person. They said, you should learn statistics and R because you really know your numbers. They nailed it. So do at least do that. Go to codecademy.com. use a promo code TWIG, take the personality quiz, so you'll get that tailored career advice and course recommendations just to see, what do they think you'd be good at? What is your passion? You can choose everything from building basic websites to writing the next great AI. No matter what your experience level, you'll be writing real working code in minutes. Python, HTML, and CSS, SQL, JavaScript. I think they just added a Swift track. So you're really learning real languages that people are using at work right now. It's an interactive platform, so there's never a dull moment. It's so much fun. Work at your own pace. I think you really want to check this out. And if you've got a young person in your family, somebody who has some interest in technology, people are always asking me, I've got a bright 12-year-old. How do I teach him how to code? This is a great place to go. This is not just, I probably Codecademy doesn't want me to say that, but it's really great for kids too. Codecademy. Join over 50 million people learning to code with Codecademy. See where coding can take you. Get 15% off your Codecademy Pro membership. All you have to do is go to codecademy.com and use the promo code TWIG. Promo code TWIG, CODECADEMY, codecademy.com for 15% off Codecademy Pro, the best way to learn to code. Coding is so much fun. I encourage anybody who's interested to try it. Even if maybe you don't know right now that you want to get a job in programming, it is a wonderful hobby too. Codecademy.com, promo code TWIG. Thank you, Codecademy, for your support of This Week in Google. So, Elon Musk clearly buys Twitter because why, Jeff? Initially I thought, he's trolling us. It's a pump and dump, as I said. Obviously, there's more than that. You don't spend $43 billion of other people's money unless you really have a plan. Is he a free speech advocate? Is that really what it's all about? I don't think so. Oh, Jeff, you're muted.
Well, he's not
I think
an
it's male
effective
ego.
one.
It's male ego?
It's male ego is primarily the reason.
So when Jeffrey Ellison was competing with Scott McNeely to have the tallest yacht, that was cool, okay? That was fine. But now it's like, who can have the rocket to the moon? Who can have the Washington Post?
Yeah, he also likes to cause trouble. He likes to have attention. He likes all that. But what I was saying before the break is that, and by the way, imagine right now Mark Zuckerberg sitting back saying, "You thought you didn't like me? You got problems with me? Take me back."
I nearly tweeted something on Monday, like, congratulations to Mark Zuckerberg for no longer being the most detested platform CEO.
Wow. Yeah, it's
and
true.
in fact, I think there's an opportunity, but you're going to make think I'm crazy here, but it won't be the first time. I think there is an opportunity for Facebook and others, Reddit and others, to come along and say, what he's doing to free speech, we don't agree with. This is what free speech means to us. This is what quality speech means to us. Well, there's an opportunity. The political right in the U.S. is celebrating this. They see him as a hero. Because they want to attack everybody and not be stopped for doing so. Sean Hannity's Twitter account made its triumphant return to Twitter, pretending that it has anything to do with Elon. And not deleting the tweet that got them in trouble in the first place. Yes. So the conservatives say this is victory. Is it a victory for them? Remember, Elon Musk, somebody tweeted Elon Musk stood 6 hours to shake Barack Obama's hand. He likes power. He wants to be around power. It's just power. It's not about politics.
If the way the wind's blowing is, the Republican Party could be back in charge of two of the houses, both houses of the Congress after the midterms. And if that were to happen, he would be positioning himself really well if he unbanned all the banned right-wing and far-right people. Oh, my gosh. When does this deal close vis-a-vis the next election? Before. November. October, November.
Now, I don't think so. It's not that Elon's political, but he is a businessman. Right? So is he trying to do what's good for his business? Other businesses? We don't think he's necessarily. The evidence that he's actually good at stuff is actually really slim. And I think one of the problems we have with like American mythology is like, oh, well, if the person has a lot of money, they must have somehow merited it in a way. And that's repeatedly shown to be a fallacy. And I think it's, here's a very large exhibit A that isn't necessarily true. But at a certain point, when you have resources, you have gravitational pull for other resources because you have power and people want to be in the orbit of that power.
power, and money has interest and compounding and stuff. Like, there's a certain point where you have escape velocity, where if you've managed to fail your way up, you're going to keep going up because the physics don't allow you to get clipped very effectively.
By the way, I want to apologize.
I mean, that's all that you can say for sure.
I want to apologize. I confused Sean Hannity with Tucker Carlson. I don't know why. It's Tucker.
I don't know why you would do that.
It's Tucker Carlson who's back, not Sean Hannity. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kathy. I want to make sure that gets corrected as quickly as possible. But this is the animated GIF that a Tucker Carlson fan, posted in response to Tucker's "We're back." Okay, there you go.
Well, no, I think we just have to evaluate things more carefully, and everybody take a deep breath and take a look, and let's understand what is the reality before us, which is, I'm sure there's things he can do competently, so I can't completely say he's a doorknob, but we may be presuming too much, especially when he's obviously wrong in terms of his how he articulates free speech, which, no, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. So even crediting the business decisions isn't necessarily the thing that we need to do, especially given that sometimes the things he does on the business thing is cheap, like with all the SEC troubles. So I think we shouldn't just overly credit it, but at the same time not necessarily underestimate him either, because even if he accidentally falls into more and more power, more and more resources, such as the reality that we're dealing with.
Ishan, who, of course, we've quoted a couple of times, former CEO of Reddit, has a new tweet thread today, which he talks a little bit about this whole issue and how difficult it is to do this kind of moderation, and specifically talks about free speech. Everyone knows this implicitly because, quote, "we will defeat spam bots" is actually a curtailment of free speech. Spam bots are expressing someone's view. He also says it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Here's another misconception people often make. Perfectly reasonable person A holds and expresses viewpoint X, okay? Crazier, volatile person B also holds and expresses viewpoint X quite loudly. B gets banned. A then believes that viewpoint X is being censored. It's not the case. It's how you say it, not what you say. Is that accurate? Is that the right way to moderate a platform like this? And can Elon do something like this? Is that what he means by free speech? No.
I don't think this is a fully fleshed out, coherent view of free speech, because it's not well tethered to what we already know about free speech. So you could make some arguments to say, under current First Amendment law in America, I think X, Y, and Z doesn't make sense. Here's why, and here's how it should be different. And you could, I don't know if I'd agree, but you could probably intelligently make a cogent argument for why or how things should be different. That's not what he's doing. He's sort of like stomping his feet and denying that gravity exists. It's not new. He's not the new expert to just all of a sudden show up and say, at last, I will think about the things that everybody has just been neglecting all these years. It's not how it works. It's not how any of this works. And oh my gosh, in this space, all around, regulators, billionaires, everybody, just stop and take stock and figure out how things work, because it's all new ground. And we need to be, because if we're not careful, we're going to break stuff, and we're going to be really sad when it's all broken and gone.
Kathy, I was just prompted by something you said earlier just a moment ago, which was, I think there might be a lies to reality ratio that determines how rich you can get. And so if your ratio is too high, you were Theranos and Elizabeth, I'm blanking out her last name. Holmes, thank you. So her reach exceeded her grasp by too much. It's not totally implausible what Theranos could have done. It seems like it might be beyond current capabilities. And you have Steve Jobs, right, whose lies to reality ratio sometimes got bigger or smaller, but executed. And Elon Musk, somewhere in there, he has audacious things that he says that are easily not backed by verifiable information. So not necessarily lies, but exaggeration that have helped him amass these fortunes. And he's always willing to push up against that line as far as possible, but then deliver enough. So I kind of think that he doesn't have that same thing going with Twitter that he did with Tesla. Like Tesla arguably pushed the world closer to electric cars faster because Elon is willing to disregard environmental regulation and workplace regulation, work hours, SEC rule. Like there's a whole litany of things. There's these allegations of racial discrimination in his plants. There's all kinds of things that he disregarded in order to push this technology further and get us electric cars faster. So you can say, well, it's reasonable he's the richest person in the world because he has pushed the entire economy of the world closer to electric cars, but we had to deal with all this stuff. And on the Twitter side, it's like, well, it's all abuse. Like, what is it that he's going to do that's going to push the world to a better place in spite of all the abuse he causes and inspires? I don't see what it is.
Yeah, I don't see a value add. I mean, to your first point, I might also say, what you were like, is there a ratio? And I might say, can we control that ratio for gender? Because I'm not entirely sure the standards are quite the same. There may be certain things of like, I don't know, really, like Jeff was saying, or he basically said as much, like it's boys with toys and like, oh, well, boys will be boys and stuff like that. And they're, well, of course, he can't help himself. So, he's gonna, infringe a few work rules, environmental rules. Like, that's just who he is. I mean, because we did that with Donald Trump for 4 years as well. Oh, that's how he is. And our tolerance for the intolerable, I think, may need some tweaking. And it's not to say that we should have law that is overly punitive or no mercy or anything like that. But I think this idea of too big to fail, too big to punish, too big to, hold to the same standards that everybody else is something that I think that's something that, if regulators would like to pay attention to is I think we've got some really big structural problems with how we organize our society and our law reflects it. Our issues, Twitter is the canary that's tweeting away the warning of what is going on. That this is happening is sort of like, hang on, I think we have problems because he could be doing this to Twitter, but he could be doing this to in a whole bunch of other contexts, and none of them would be good. But I think because it's interfacing with speech and expression and the ability for our community to hold itself together and talk to each other, that there's this particular kind of pain that will come out of essentially what's recklessness. And, the recklessness may hurt him, but the rest of us are going down with him. And that's a problem because he can absorb the fall much better than the rest of us can.
Derek Thompson writes in The Atlantic that Elon could actually be good for Twitter. Unlike the board, he actually uses Twitter and actually likes Twitter.
Another Atlantic hot take.
Which makes him a candidate to fix it.
No, for a couple of reasons. And one of the things that I want to praise Twitter for, at least historically, is Twitter has been unique. And at its best moments, one of the reasons that it tended to grow and improve was because it was very responsive to its users. And I think one of my favorite things that I don't think I'm making up, I don't think it's apocryphal, is even the way we do the ats being hyperlinked and the hashtags turning into hyperlinks was, I think, a Google engineering essentially looking at the lexicological behavior of its users and saying, oh, this seems to be how people address
Twitter
each other.
Yes.
Yeah,
Not
and
Google,
they recognized that that's what people were doing.
Yeah, Chris
and
Messina
built a
added
tool.
the hashtag, and then Twitter said, oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And the
so and to build the hyperlinks around it. Like it looked at what the users were doing and built responsive design to what the users were doing. And that's Twitter at its best. That's any platform at its best. When you look at your user community and you build the tools that they need. And so he doesn't, because yes, he's a user and yes, he has his own personal this, that, or the other thing, but he certainly doesn't have an endemic view of like what most of the lived experience would be of any other Twitter user other than the other billionaires. Like it's so exceptional. He can't walk in anybody else's shoes and he's not interested in understanding who else is in any other user's shoes.
So am I alone on the panel in saying I'm going to wait and see and give him the benefit of the doubt and maybe it'll get better? Or is that just not possible? Jeff, you don't seem like...
Yeah, you're alone.
Get you on Mastodon, buddy.
I do have a Mastodon instance, my very own. So, yeah.
I will tell myself whatever lie I need to sleep at night, but I'm not entirely sure that in the light of day. I think I have a tremendous sense of optimism of a Musk-controlled Twitter, except to the extent that it might somehow manage to be a catalyst for leave him to his crumbling empire and the rest of us will go build something good.
Breaking Views just put up a piece. I just put it on the rundown at the bottom of the very long Twitter section that says they don't think he's going to buy it.
Really?
I would.
He's willing to pay $1 billion to walk away?
I'm not sure willing, but he may be stuck with it.
But, I mean, Matt Levine argues that actually he can't walk away. Like, he can't just pay $1 billion. The Twitter board could go to him and shake him down with the deal.
So you made the deal because it's a personal contract.
They could force him to do it.
Levine says it could cost him as much as $21 billion, his personal stake in it, which would, I mean, I know Elon has $270 billion. Theoretically,
well, less today.
Value.
Less today.
A little less today. But I don't think he has $21 billion hanging around in the closet. So why? So they say Elon Musk. This is Lauren Silva, Laughlin, and Gina Chan writing on Reuters. Probably won't buy Twitter.
I love the anecdote in the beginning there.
4 years ago, Elon Musk vowed to set up a peanut brittle company. This is not a joke.
I don't remember this.
To take on Warren Buffett's iconic U.S. confectioner See's Candies. Then he changed his mind. It wouldn't be surprising if Musk's deal to buy Twitter went the same way.
I don't. I mean, this is why I go back to the corporate law, because you need a path for failure. You can't just decide it. But there's something about this that just smells so iffy, because we can see the iffiness all over the place. That this is not how business typically got done in any respect.
There are paths for failure. If there's a mass exodus and suddenly Twitter, is falling apart, that might give him cause for withdrawing. Yeah, Twitter could withdraw because there is a non-disparagement clause in their agreement, and clearly
which he's already violated.
Has already violated that.
Yeah.
So there are ways out. And $1 billion is not the end of the world for Elon. It might be for Twitter.
Twitter has earnings coming out shortly, too. And so some people have suspected the earnings may be terrible, which would give him an option to get out.
So maybe Elon has been trolling us all along, knows that these earnings are going to suck.
Well, I don't think that's a surprise. So this isn't miscellaneous. People have noticed, and some people have thought that that's why the board actually took the deal, because they thought that the earnings were going to deflate the stock price, and this might be better. I mean, it's hard to say what should happen. This is just such a crazy deal that maybe it was the right move, but such a borderline right move that it's hard to say. And everything is changing under our feet immediately. I mean, he's devaluing the company.
The other thing that's telling is the actual stock price of Twitter, because in theory, if Elon's going to pay $54.20 for it, the share price should come close to $54.20. Anything less is a profit. It's right now at $48.64. It's dropped 2% today, which tells you that that's the stock market saying, yeah, we don't think it's going to happen. If they did, they'd be buying.
Well, at least we're going to hedge the bet, yeah.
What happens to Parag Agrawal? First of all, I hope he's gone because I can't say his name. Agrawal. No, that's a terrible reason. And Parag, you're a nice guy. I'm sorry. What happens to Parag, though? He just became the CEO of Twitter. He's got to be gone, right?
Oh, well, they all have change of ownership clauses in their contracts.
Oh yeah, he has. I think a huge parachute. It's like several.
Vijaya Gadde, who's brilliant, who's the head of safety and law. Musk set loose his dogs on her. It's just awful. So they're just waiting until they can cash out, and they're all
actually.
gone.
I am wondering to what extent down the tree those change in ownership clauses may actually be in other people's packages.
Agrawal's golden parachute is $39 million. Jack Dorsey could, based on his 2.2% of Twitter, make $978 million. No wonder he's happy. Could it be rats deserting a sinking ship going, yeah, Elon, come on. It was awfully quick. They changed their tune very fast.
I'm wondering if very, very, very smart people on the Twitter side actually do know what's going on. I do not think that if I were to put sort of I think there's more smart people on the Well, this is mathematically true. There's more smart people on the Twitter side than there are on the Elon Musk side.
Just by sheer numbers. Numbers alone.
Just by sheer numbers. But I think I meant that as more of a compliment, that I think Twitter may have more smart people and the right smart people who may be wise enough to try to guide this more carefully. And I don't think that care is necessarily on the Musk side. But I don't want to underestimate him either.
It does honestly look like a terrible business decision on Elon's part.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, unless, I mean, I would say, does he have an incredible plan? But he's never given any instance of that. There was a great book a few years ago called The Accidental Zillionaire about Paul Allen that came out at exactly the wrong time. I know the author a little bit, and is a great book, but it came out exactly when all of Paul Allen's foresight paid off. So up until that point, you can make the argument everything he'd done had been happenstance in the timing. And then suddenly everything, because he was so far ahead of everybody else with so many ideas, and then they all paid off. And then for the next, I think, 15 years after the book came out, it was like, oh no, this guy's a genius. But in 2002, he didn't look quite so bright. And I'm like, does that happen to Elon Musk? Do we think this guy became the richest person in the world because he had a few good ideas and he'd work people to death, and then this magical thing happened, and then the rest of his life we're like, oh no, that makes sense. It makes sense he made all this money. I don't feel it like
or the
what
opposite
with him.
Or he's already so made the contract with the devil. Dr. Faust is here. Has gotten what he's going to get.
It's kind of a shame. I think we'll see this, I'd say this looking back on it, that something that had such promise as Twitter and really was so important for quite a while in the national zeitgeist should end this way.
So I want to make sure that I'm very, very, very sad for this platform that I think a lot of really dedicated people have been very genuinely working very hard to build into something cool. But my concern is that we don't survive the loss of it because we've so hobbled the ecosystem that we can't get something else that's new. From these ashes, we have to get something better. We need to get more better. And I think my closing comments was to repeat what I was saying is, take a deep breath. People keep breaking things they don't understand. This is Elon Musk breaking the quality of his own investment. This is regulators who keep trying to misunderstand the problems and propose solutions. And everybody needs to stop and take a deep breath. That's regulators in Washington. That's regulators in the state. I point to Minnesota's currently trying to move something. Really, this is going to make a mess. Don't do it. Everybody stop. And let's have Europe, name it. We need to be more careful because this whole pretense that at last we are the smart people who are going to come and take care of everything is not smart because it ignores the smart people who have already been there and working very hard at things. And I think we need to listen to who's in the space and who's paying attention. And these are hard, complex problems and issues and also really exciting things that provide value to everybody, humanity, democracy, speech, communication. This isn't going to be solved overnight, not with simple legislation, not with a weird takeover thing. Like we need to be careful because this is really important stuff that an awful lot of people, lives, livelihoods are all depending on. So be careful.
Well said,
Kathy, with that, thank you. Perfect.
Your valedictory address.
Yes, because we're going to, because you made us promise to let you go now, and we will. But I really am glad you could join us on short notice. Kathy Gillis, author.
We didn't tell you, Glenn, that this goes on for 5 hours, did we?
Oh, yeah, Glenn,
I've
you're
got
stuck.
my supplies stocked in. I've got the emergency supplies to my right.
I hope you have a kind bar or two. Thank you, Kathy. Really a pleasure having you on. We'll have you on real soon. cgcouncil.com, COUNSEL.
Brilliant, Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Kathy. Yeah.
Bye.
It does raise an interesting issue. We're going to take a break. When you come back, there may not be much Twitter left for Elon to take over because what is Twitter but a bunch of talented engineers who are relying on their stock options for compensation? And that compensation may have just been undermined completely. But we'll talk about that when we come back. Glenn Fleischman, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Glad to have you. His new URL, GLENN.fun. It's double good. Go there. and of course, Jeff Jarvis. I don't know what you're doing here, but you're here anyway. Buzz Machine.
You're stuck.
I'm just teasing. Buzzmachine.com. You and Glenn, if you want, while I'm doing this ad, can talk about Gutenberg and type and stuff like that, because I know you both share a passion for that. Our show today brought to you by Our Crowd. If you if you're sitting and watching all of this and wondering, I've got money in savings, I've got money in the stock market, but how do I get in on all the fun the venture capitalists are having? That's what Our Crowd is all about. Our Crowd is a group of venture capitalists who've decided to make what they see, their so-called deal flow, available to you as an accredited investor. All around the world, tech companies are innovating and driving returns for investors. Our Crowd analyzes those companies across the global and this is important, private market, selecting those with the greatest growth potential, then brings them to you. Why private? These are companies that haven't yet gone public. They are not well known. They haven't had an exit yet. This is getting in at the very beginning in some of the most exciting technologies out there right now, from personalized medicine to robotics to cybersecurity, where companies spend $150 billion annually on cybersecurity. These are very much growth areas. And our crowd is smart. They're going out and identifying innovators so you can invest when the growth potential is the greatest early. Our crowd is the fastest growing venture capital investment community. Their accredited investors have already invested over $1 billion in growing tech companies. 21 of the portfolio companies are already unicorns. Many of our crowd's members have benefited from over 50 exits, IPOs or sales of portfolio companies. Now, obviously, this is not for everyone. First of all, you have to be an accredited investor. What that means will depend on what country you're in. So what I want you to do is go to ourcrowd.com/twig. When you tell it what country, they'll say what the rules are, what your net worth has to be, things like that. That's different in every country. But if you are an accredited investor, you can join at no cost. You can join the Our Crowd platform, which is great fun because you get to learn about all these interesting companies. If you see something you want to invest in, you can participate in single company deals for as little as $10,000. Our crowd also has funds. If you don't want to do the due diligence, you just want to get in on the fund. Minimum investment for the funds is $50,000. So you do have to have at least $10,000. You must be an accredited investor. The terms, though, will vary on depending on what country you're in. So just go and input the country at ourcrowd.com/twig. I'll give you an example of one of the companies right now you can invest in. It's called Sotero, Sotero. They have developed and patented, I might add, a new approach to data protection that eliminates the gaps of traditional methods, securing any data asset. And it can be on-prem or in the cloud. And right now, Sotero is being trusted by one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies. So this is a really inside look at something that is potentially could be huge. But that's the excitement of our crowd. Explore Sotero's potential before you invest, obviously, at OURCROWD, ourcrowd.com/twig. It's free to join, by the way. OURCROWD.com/twig. Join the fastest growing venture capital investment community, ourcrowd.com/twig. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Google, which is somewhat a little bit about Google sometimes. You're on Twitter, right, Glenn? You use Twitter regularly. I know you do. I follow you.
That's where I got to know him.
Yeah.
I used to get, I guess to say, Jeff, and I've said this to you privately, it's such a pleasure because I grew up reading you in TV Guide, and there's always something, I mean, I don't want to age you, but it's like seeing a caricature come to life. I used to see your little boy there.
I say that every week, yes.
He's a real person.
No, I feel the same way, Glenn. I grew up reading him not grew up, we're the same age, but I read him in the Examiner when he was here in San Francisco for years, and I'm very familiar with the byline, and so it was a real thrill when he started working here. So I feel
I try to explain to my kids, there's a thing called TV Guide, and we used to get TV listings, and you'd pore over them
on the couch,
circle things, you'd plug in your VCR Plus number. It was really important.
And it had the easiest crossword of any major publication.
They don't want to make you feel it. Yeah, I use Twitter. I used to get razzed for using Twitter because I used it almost like my own personal message board back when it was younger, and I just was on it way too much and posted. It was kind of always there in the background. And then at some point, when you exceed 500,000 tweets, one must reevaluate one's life. So I deleted a lot of old tweets. I just deleted most of my history at one point after politics got too complicated to leave one's past exposed online.
Yeah.
A lot of people I know have self-deleting tweets, which is great. They I think Marco Arment has creator of Overcast and other fine products. He has, I believe, a thing that just goes through and after maybe a few days deletes all the tweets older than a few days.
Wow, what a good idea, actually.
It's kind of neat.
It's my memory. I have to go back. I know I linked to that. I know I talked about that. And I use Twitter Advanced Search all the time to just find stuff I can't remember because I'm old.
Well, in fact, I think I know about you, Glenn, because of your prolific tweeting. I'm sure that's where I first became aware of you. So
Well, it was fun. There was a point. Remember when Twitter was fun? There was a
Yes.
point before right-wing politics. And I don't want to listen. I try not to be too biased in anything I say, but it was that there was a particular kind of mode on Twitter or mood on Twitter, and then it wasn't that there's anything specifically wrong with people who have right of center beliefs, but there was a specific tranche of people on the right, and particularly far right, and even alt and Nazi right, who invaded Twitter and made it kind of unusable through abuse and other stuff. And so it wasn't like, it wasn't like a George Will Republican who's not a Republican anymore, right? He's not even registered as much. It was a very specific attempt, and that was gamified. It was tested with Gamergate years ago, and then rolled out with the Trump campaign, and now became the dominant way that Twitter gets used in political battles and other things. And so there was that time when it was fun, and you'd meet people and be like, hey, I made friendships. You go to conferences, you'd know 100 people when you came to a new town.
I don't think that ended in 2016. I feel like it ended earlier than that.
Yeah, 2014, 2013, maybe. It's been a while. But if you're on...
And honestly, it wasn't
the rising tide.
It's not the content of tweets that ever bother me. It's the just as Yishan says, the delivery. It's how they say it, not what they say. It's the behavior. Yeah. And for many years, I mean, I got on Twitter first in 2006. I quit it briefly because I was concerned about name confusion. And then I think it was Justine said, no, you have to be on Twitter. So I rejoined in April 2007. And I don't think I have 500,000 tweets, but I was very active in the early days.
How many do I have? Oh, God, I haven't looked.
But I've deleted all up to a few years ago.
It's dangerous if you find out how many you've made. But
Jeff's on it even as we do the show, which is much to my chagrin. Yeah,
it's the foundation of my and so many other people's independent careers too. As I'm a freelance journalist, and I became a type and print historian. Kind of through the back door by tweeting a lot and meeting other people. I've developed a group of fellow aficionados of this kind of paper plate that was used to cast metal plates before offset printing called flong. And I mean, you find the most obscure subgroups, and we talk about.
I wanted to go to one of Glenn's events, and it was sold out already. I couldn't get into his flong event, for God's sake.
A flong event sold out.
I'll do future flong events.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great.
Glenn, I want to show you this. Oh
yeah.
There's a book about Gutenberg.
It's a book?
No, it's a pop-up. It's a Gutenberg pop-up
That is
card
amazing.
that pops up a printing press. Did somebody send you that, Jeff?
No, I bought it from the. This was from the Museum of Print in Haverhill, Mass.
Nice,
great institution. I've never been, but they are great.
Oh, you'd fell there. Oh,
I would have to move in.
Just down the road from Mark Twain's Linotype in Hartford, Connecticut.
That's right. Mark Twain famously
on one trip.
Mark Twain, who funded the machine that bankrupted him, the typesetting machine that bankrupted.
Hard to believe, but there is other Elon Musk news. Hard to believe, but it may explain why, brokenhearted, he's buying Twitter. In the trial, the libel trial between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, Amber Heard said she never really loved Elon Musk and was filling space with him following Johnny Depp breakup.
Oh, pull it out of the heart. Oh,
I never loved you, Elon. I'm buying Twitter. So now we know. I think now we know exactly what happened.
Oh, God, he's just
incredible. That trial is too much. We know too much about too many people.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what Twitter's about. So
yeah. Okay, just so maybe it's probably not time to eulogize Twitter, or maybe it is. No, but what are some of your favorite Twitter tropes or Twitter moments or things that happened on Twitter? Remember when people used to instead of doing a Google search, they do what do they call it? A Twitter search or a crowd mind?
Yeah, what was that called?
That was fun.
Yeah.
And
Hive Mind?
Hive Mind or something.
Hive
and
Mind.
they would say on Twitter, well, what do you think? And you'd get hundreds of tweets about a subject. Oh, those are always fun. I think things started to go downhill when people started doing long threads. Maybe 280 characters wasn't a great idea.
Ones. No, I was against 280 at first, but no, I think that's wrong. I liked it. I mean, I met Glenn because I got into all my Gutenberg stuff, and there's this guy who's doing this amazing stuff around Gutenberg, and it was purely in Twitter. We took a course. He also, it was because of him, I saw that he was taking a course in the Gutenberg Bible. We ended up taking it together virtually.
It was great.
I have my Gutenberg, my book history wonks Twitter list is my happy place. When all this gets to be too much,
lists.
I go there.
There's another thing that Twitter doesn't really bring to the foreground, but is one of the most powerful, interesting things. I know that I followed during the COVID pandemic your COVID experts list, Jeff. That was really a great thing to have. People don't use lists all that much, but that was another nice feature of early Twitter. I remember
what I always go back to is the Drill account, that DRIL, which is this guy. I think he finally admitted who he was, but it's this whole. He just does these amazing, strange tweets that are incredibly zeitgeisty and funny, and yet impossible to explain even in context. And there's one he made many years ago. I'm not owned. I continue to insist as I slowly shrink and transform into a corn cob. And some days that's the only thing. It's just all of what people are doing, right? It's just 2011. It just summarizes so much of discourse. People saying, especially people they start shouting louder and louder. I'm correct. I'm not wrong. It doesn't matter that you have tapes that show me saying I'm lying, as they shrink into a corn cob.
Actually, that's a good point. One of the things Elon says is everybody will have to be authenticated and use their real names.
Yeah.
One of the best things about Twitter is the parody accounts, the fake accounts. The
New York
weird
Times
accounts.
Newsbot is the best of the time. It is. You follow that, I hope.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
And the Times
Doug
is
J.
on
Balloon.
it, or is that one?
No. This is a different one. No, this is Doug J. Balloon, the NY Times Newsbot, and so it's inside his head. I presume it's his. He calls himself Doug, but it's a made up name. Where he comes up with the headlines that he's sure the Times is going to do. And then sometimes he tweets an actual Times headline, and it's like, is this the Onion? Is this Newsbot? Oh no, the Times really did do that. And
there is also, I've just found searching for that, a account called Impressions of the Times that uses an AI to create illustrations from Times headlines.
Ooh, that's pretty.
Isn't that interesting? When Moskva warship sunk in Russian disinformation faces a test was the inspiration for this beautiful work of art.
Kind of lovely.
Yeah, Impressions of the Times. That's a new account. We early on we tried a novel. I think it was called Novel 140, where you could only write 140 characters of the novel, and we had a bunch of people each writing a tweet in succession. The novel never got very far, but it was kind of interesting.
I thought Twitter would be used more for fiction at times.
Yeah.
We've seen examples of it. And one thing I was hoping is that people would play games on Twitter. These are the things that, so Twitter has left all this low-hanging fruit. Why not gamify Twitter, but you could have scripted events or even improv events happening among accounts that would be incredibly fun to observe in a sort of special space or timeline. When you lose your cat, you post, hey, I lost my cat, and people in Timbuktu are retweeting it.
Yeah.
Not helpful. I appreciate the sentiment, but why not have regional, local Twitter sections? Instead, they're like, well, Clubhouse, obviously a great idea. Let's make Twitter Spaces and do audio on a text-oriented medium that's been very successful. So I just feel like it's not that there's a paucity of ideas. I just don't feel like they push in the right direction. So one part of me is like, all right, in the best complexion, even though I don't think Musk, anything he said indicates trust in this direction, in the best way, it could be, what if he did bring in a bunch of new ideas or brought in a really interesting, challenging staff that just totally shook things up, and they kept the best of Twitter and tweaked it and added stuff we actually liked. I mean, it's not infeasible, it's unlikely, but there's so much room for those kinds of things to happen.
Actually, he may have to do that, because I don't know how much of the current Twitter team is likely to be around when he walks in the door.
You were asking about that earlier, is that if you have options with strike prices and so forth, you join because you hope there was an upside. And if the upside is exactly $54.20, there are things they can do to keep employees where they, even though it's a privately held company, they can use different valuations, so there's more to sweeten it. But if you join in the last couple of years, you might have no opportunity to have an upside, so why would you stay? You just have your, keep your options you have. Your options would be redeemed or whatever if they weren't doing stock
It's one of the reasons Silicon Valley companies go public is so that they have a liquid market for options that they can then hire employees with. Private companies, I've been screwed by private stock in private companies. It's a very, there's a long and sordid tale there. If it's not a public company, forget it, right? It's not a real option. So that's a good reason to stay public, and I
had phantom equity in Entertainment Weekly and in Advanced Local. And,
sure. I had phantom equity in Tech TV.
Dob our cheers away.
I almost had phantom equity in CNET, but that didn't materialize, so never mind. Speaking of CNET, what the hell?
Glenn, right here, is an expert in typography. I want to get his view of the typographical artistry of this logo.
So yesterday, a number of people were shocked when they went to CNET.com. Let me refresh the page so you get the full effect. And what is the typeface here that they're using? It's a kind of archaic looking. Glenn, you might recognize this. There's a sans serif menu bar, but the headlines are in some sort of weird serif.
Nifty tool. The font's called Sentinel. I have a nifty tool called "What's that font?" And I click on a font.
That was fast.
Tells you what the font is.
Sentinel, huh?
Monument Grotesque is the
aptly
font
named
for tech money. And then it's Sentinel. These are probably going to be open source fonts. It's a little bit old fashioned. It has horrible quotation marks, though, don't you think? They're like straight curves.
Oh, yeah.
That's like when you forget to use the right quotation marks. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's tilted. It's like an inch mark or a foot mark rather. Don't get your inch and foot marks together, or the Stonehenge you order will be the wrong size.
And there's some very odd. Like, look at TV. Look at the
kerning there.
The kerning there is very strange.
I don't know, there's a trend that every tech site and a lot of other sites move from intricate designs that maybe were over-designed to it's just white. It's just some black text on a white background.
Well, yeah,
once you get past, hard to differentiate.
Once you get past the Sentinel, you get a very bland kind of sans serif for the rest of it.
They made a lot of money doing this redesign.
It's a big redesign. Wow, look at that.
A grotesque, by the way, is just a sans serif font. It's
okay.
It's the old term for it. Gothic. It used to be called Gothic, not the fancy kind. Is also called.
Yeah.
So
Glenn, when I started Entertainment Weekly, we had a logo that was controversial because it was tilted and they didn't like it and and so the bosses came after us going, fix this and you got to do this, you got to do that. So I go after the design director. And by the way, we had design problems, but he said the font was grotesque. I said, well, can you find something that's not grotesque?
How about this black letter? Do you like that?
We're doing font stories here.
Helvetica is derived from accidents grotesque is the predecessor.
So what is what is the etymology of grotesque? That's very strange.
Oh, it's one of these German. It's one of those German things. It's there's a German derivation of it because it doesn't mean grotesque as we speak it. It's
right.
It's a specific thing that became applied to like what's the thing, like not burlesque. You talk about something being over elaborate.
Rococo? No.
Baroque.
Baroque. Right. It's kind of like grotesque is just a combination word that comes from that. So but it sounds, it meant more like interesting and fantastic. And so it was a different, when serifs were everything, then a grotesque was used for display faces. The same thing like a Gothic, like Franklin, the Franklin Gothic typeface is a classic sans serif from before sans serifs were designed like Helvetica. Helvetica kind of ushered in a new way of designing typefaces without serifs. So you can get these hilarious names for typefaces.
So it was originally Grotesk. Not the traditional grotesque.
Did you know that there was a typographer, a type designer who was Hitler's prisoner?
No.
I don't know about this at all.
You don't? Oh, goody. Oh, no. I got one like Glenn. You've seen the Gutenberg type, which is Gothic, and not in our sense. Gothic is oddly, we over here call that Helvetica, but Gothic there is that stuff that looks like a Gothic cathedral, right? And it's what the German publications all used. And there was actually a debate in the German parliament about what the official font of Germany should be, and went back and forth, and Fraktur won, and Hitler liked it for a while, but then he decided that it shouldn't be because all the lands they were conquering couldn't read it. And so they decided it was a Jewish font.
Oh, Lord.
Meanwhile,
famously
there's a guy named Jan Tschichold. I'm going to mispronounce his name.
Well, that's exactly. You pronounced it exactly correctly, though.
Good. Who wrote a book called The New Typography, in which he called for a single typeface without ornamentation, no serifs, no nothing. And he condemned the German Fraktur, that it was the exclusivist character of that. And this was a dangerous view. And so he said that his views would have died anyway, but a few years after his book, Hitler came. He was accused of creating un-German typography and art. And so they arrested him for his font. And he got a passport out to leave Germany and became the designer of Penguin.
Well, I'll be damned.
I can tell you, so Fraktur was so associated with German. This is a quote I'd learned a few years ago. Otto von Bismarck, what was he? He's the Chancellor of Germany in the 19th century.
President, too, yeah. I think
President, sorry. And he said, if I can speak some German, it's Deutsche Bücher in latinische Buchstabe lese ich nicht, which is, I don't read German books in Latin letters. He would send them back.
Wow.
If someone sent him
so was everything in Fraktur?
Yeah, it was impossible to read. It's very difficult. I used to read some when I took German classes. You get a book that was printed in an older book.
It's hard. Oh, it's
and
so hard.
The K and the L look. It was hard for. I believe I read a statistic. I think it was people who read Fraktur read it 40% more slowly than reading the same text in Latin alphabet.
It does fit the pronunciation of German, though.
Yeah, it's very German.
Very nicely. I think if I look at that, see now I'm becoming literate. I always look at this and say, well, it's like Gothic or something, but Fraktur is very specific.
It's not wrong
It's also
to call it
called
Gothic, but it's
Yeah.
Fraktur was a very specific face. But yeah, it's got there's a typeface designer who designed this guy named Bertold Volpe, who designed Albertus, which is a face. Once you see it, you will see it everywhere. It was used in the Prisoner 1960s Prisoner TV series. It's just ubiquitous for having a certain kind of it feels like a unique appearance, but it is everywhere. And Volpe was Jewish, and he had to leave over typeface design also in the 30s because he was no longer allowed to work, even though he had just developed, in fact, a very nice Fraktur face, and then went to England, was sponsored to go there, was sent to Australia by boat during the war through U-boat infested waters with other German nationals, even though he had to flee Germany. Then they brought him back and lived a long, happy life and made a lot of very nice book covers.
I shall be using Albertus from now on
It's wonderful
in all of my printing. And instead of the quick brown fox, I'm going to start saying waltz, bad nymph, for quick jigs vex.
That's great. That's great.
Do you spend a lot of money, Glenn, on fonts and typeface, digital fonts?
I don't. I have.
One could.
You could blow a fortune on them, which is great too, because the market for them is smaller. There's some great stories too. As the person who developed the typeface you think of as the Harry Potter typeface that's used on merchandise, it's guy Rich Kegler of P22. He's not allowed to disclose the term, so if you ask him, he can't talk about it. But was it Warner Brothers owned it at the time? They licensed the font for certain usage, then they stuck it on merchandise without having the license for it. So I expect there were a lot of zeros behind whatever number that was settled for.
Wow.
But it was right when Harry Potter was incredibly popular. So if you'll see a face, you'll be like, oh, that's that face. That's that Harry Potter face. And it's because of that popularization. But I own a bunch of P22 fonts, I own some monotype fonts. But I bought a lot of typefaces a long time ago. It's not that one. There's one, it's on like merchandises and bags and things. It's kind of, the book, sometimes you'll see Albertus on Harry Potter. Sorry, I don't mean to devolve into the...
No. And I've got one more question.
I warned you, Leo. We could do this
I mean, I'm so sick of Twitter. I'd much rather talk about this. We will get to the Google quarterly results in just a second. But I want to ask you, so there are a lot of free fonts. For instance, this Albertus is being offered for free on cofonts.com. Are those not as good as, the fonts that you might get from well-known foundries that cost hundreds of dollars?
Yes, yeah, because in the United States specifically, and in certain other countries in the world, you can't copyright the appearance of a typeface. You can only copyright the underlying code that makes up the typeface. So someone can't copy your PostScript or OpenType code and produce it. But after some lawsuits, I want to say in the 90s about it, it became clear that you could essentially re-outline typefaces and then release them. So when you buy, but the key thing is there's all the kerning and special tweaking that goes into a font. They can't take that because that's software. So the makers of duplicate fonts, some of them are adaptations and are perfectly good fonts in their own right. And you can go to Google Fonts, and there's a group called, is it ISL? There's a group that supports lesser used typefaces or lesser used scripts that are used for typefaces. So Native American languages and languages in Asia and other countries where they have developed really high quality typefaces, which often include Latin characters and characters in these languages that aren't otherwise supported, and give them away for free. So you can go and find super high quality free.
The numbers of them is phenomenal what's available.
Oh my
now.
gosh.
Where would I find that? Because I am a font nerd, but I don't want to. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on fonts for no good reason, and I would like good quality fonts. You know, most Linux and Mac distributions offer a lot of fonts for free for download the nerd fonts and so forth. I collect programming fonts, monotype fonts. Where can I go to get good fonts for free?
Out on the name of this group. Well, I mean, Google Fonts is a great source, and if you literally search on, I wish I could remember the name of this. I'd compiled a list at one point, but there are places that will list. If you can find a place that lists Google Fonts and some other foundries, you'll find lists of typefaces that are freely licensable but designed, in-house essentially, or designers contribute, and they're often licensed for unlimited use or sometimes for non-commercial purposes. But if you find Albertus in most places, that's a copied version, and it won't have the quality of it. And actually, a friend of mine, a fellow I became friends with because he did the new version of Albertus for Monotype, Toshio Magari, he developed a kind of revival version of Albertus that is fantastic and comes in Greek and Russian, Cyrillic, and has a little picture of its designer, Bertolt Volpe, as one of the characters. It's very
Oh, that's cool.
Do you have a favorite body type font?
Oh gosh, I am a big fan of Minion. I've used a lot.
I
of
like Minion
too.
That's an Adobe.
That's from the 80s. As Roger Slimback designed that, and it's just an amazingly versatile typeface. I use a lot of I use Bembo sometimes. Again, that's a font that dates back to the Hypnero Tamakia Polyphily, a book printed in the 1400s about dreams. So there's a lot of typefaces like that. There's a great story, about how this fellow who I got to meet him when I was in London. He figured out that, in the 1910s, this person who was slowly losing his mind had a falling out with he was a printer, and he had a falling out with his business partner, and the business partner agreed to let the printer keep the typefaces and the punches from which they were made until some certain period of time, I think until his death or something like that. And so the guy who's losing his mind slowly starts dumping all of the type into the Thames. He carries pounds of it in his pockets.
The most beautiful font ever, the Dove's Bible font.
Oh, it's incredible.
It is magnificent. Thomas Cobden Sanderson.
Yes, Cobden Sanderson. And you can read his journals, and you can see how the man, it's really sad. He's working with lead. Maybe he was having lead poisoning. I don't know. And then when it's all done, he triumphantly announces that he dumped it all. Well, so this fellow, Robert Greene, says, well, what if I could figure out where it was? And he pinpoints where he thinks it is, and he finds type, and then he hires the divers from the City of London, and they dive and they retrieve, 100-odd pieces. I've been to his home and held some of the Dove type in my hand, and it's what a wonderful story. Now, the funny part is I have found 2, maybe 3 other stories in which type has been thrown in a fit of pique or in despair into a body of water. So
type designers are nutty people. They are.
Maybe it is the lead, huh? Maybe it's the lead, yeah.
I have a book I want to write called The Lead Heave in the Lake. I think something as bad as that. But I don't know.
If you look up Dove Bible, you'll see what I think is the most gorgeous font.
Well, there's a good, and I'm showing it right now, a good BBC news story on the whole recovery of the fonts and the of the type and all of that.
You can buy. Robert has a modern rendition. He has spent so much time looking at the work of the Dove Press. And,
this is. Tell me if I'm wrong here. This is derived from what is my favorite base font, which is Jansen.
That's right. That's right. So it's a typeface.
And-
from
Oh my God,
first-
we have fallen into the
1470s.
type hole here.
Yeah,
Told ya.
sorry. This is
Told
what
ya.
happens. This is what happens.
You know,
We're
I
on
love
either
it.
side of
though.
you.
I love
Meet me
it.
up here with type.
It's it's a very nerdy, but it's fascinating. By the way, if you go to Glenn.fun, what is that font? Because that is a nice. You've chosen a nice typeface for your
What if
website.
now you have to write, I think it's, now, and of course, the one typeface I don't know is the one that's on my own site.
the one you chose?
It is, I have to load it and use my tool.
It's a very nice,
it's
grotesque font.
It's Museo Sans.
Museo,
It's a modern typeface that comes
Yeah.
in lots of weights, and that's the other way you can do it too. Is if you have an Adobe, it's going to sound like an ad. It is not an ad. It's not an ad. If you have an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, they include what we used to be a former service they bought.
have all of those.
Typekit.
Yeah.
And with Typekit, you get included. You
Hundreds,
can use
yeah.
tons of fonts, including as web fonts. Many of them are available. So I have it linked to a bunch of sites.
Is the asterisk here a dingbat or is it the actual asterisk?
It's a Unicode character, so it's a rendition in Museo Sans of an 8-pointed star. And the funny part, if you go on mobile, it's a totally different character. Oh, you want to talk about Unicode now? Sure.
Oh, Unicode!
Well, let's.
You know, this is the greatest thing about
geekery.
being a nerd or a geek is it doesn't matter what the topic is. If we can
No, it
dive
doesn't.
deep and get some passion, it's fascinating, and I love going down that rabbit hole. So much
There's
fun.
such great characters in the font world. You'd be surprised. That story Glenn just told is my very favorite. It's got to be the best.
The only I never,
fun with great characters.
Glenn. I know you study this formally. You're actually a designer, and you've actually, it says in your webpage, the last person ever apprenticed as a typesetter in the world.
I may be exaggerating, but pretty close. It feels like last generation at least.
The only thing I know is, and it's a wonderful book I've recommended many, many times, is Stop Stealing Sheep.
Oh yeah, Erik Spiekermann.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just funny. I just was exchanging tweets with him on the Twitter machine. It's part of why I know him is because of Twitter. Fantastic designer, typeface designer, very interesting guy. I have a giant book. If you look behind me, it's too low below. It's a book called what is it? Hello, I am Erik, and it's written about him. Very interesting cat.
I like this book so much. Apparently, I've purchased it twice, according to Amazon. I don't know why. Maybe that was as a gift. I don't know.
That's good. Erik developed this way of doing what he calls digital letterpress, is he uses a modern machine that makes plates from digital files in a very particular way. He had to spend 60,000 euros to modify an off-the-shelf device, and then he can print on a letterpress, on a automated, like motorized, sort of one of the last modern letterpresses, these very high quality books. So he's done a relatively small series, but I have a few of them, and they are absolutely letterpress. They feel like it, but they're this interesting hybrid between old and new. And I mean, that's
still has the bite,
most fun.
right?
Yeah, it's the bite. It's very black ink, because letterpress ink is often much blacker than that you can use with offset because of the way it applies to paper. And anyway, it's the intersection between that old and new that I think is the most fun. There's a lot of stuff that's VR and AR is totally new and it's its own beast, but where you can hit physical and digital things together, I just think 2D printing and 3D cutting and 3D printing, that kind of thing.
Somebody in our IRC chat has discovered the Unicode for the 8-pointed star and put it in our IRC chat. If you have a client that does Unicode, it really looks good. It's nice.
I had to look it up myself. Warning is in iOS, it looks like a weird, it's a little weird. It's like a little starburst instead of this beautiful thing that you can see in a desktop browser.
It's really nice.
Again, Unicode, every platform, a new experience of what the character might be.
Google did not have a very good quarter. Yeah. It's interesting. We were talking on Windows Weekly about Microsoft, which had an excellent quarter, and lots to celebrate until Paul mentioned. But by the way, with Google's terrible quarter, their revenue far exceeded the total revenue of Microsoft. Their revenue in advertising alone. So that puts it a little bit in perspective. Google said it may be the war, I don't know, but digital ad sales down quite a bit.
YouTube was hurting badly. So there may be TikTok?
Maybe from TikTok. YouTube ad revenue, which the analysts had thought would increase 25%, only increased 14%. See, this is the problem with this. It's a miss, but it's not a drop.
It's a lot. It's still
also,
a lot. Isn't it? Apple's when Apple stuck in the do not track me
It could be.
code.
It
That's
could be.
supposed to part of that too. Although I
Apple's-
think YouTube suffers less than that because they feed people.
They're
the
first
algorithm.
person. So first parties, in fact, benefit from Apple's ATT because ATT means you can't track people as a third party. Google doesn't need to. Google,
That's totally true. They are the first party.
They're the first party for everything you do. Although I thought it was interesting, after all the time we've talked, we had Richard Gingras on to talk about Google AMP. Jeff, I was not a big fan. Jeff tried to explain why it was a good thing. Google's AMP seems to be now
it's
losing
horrible.
ground. It's over,
Yeah.
which is surprising.
Well, because and fine, you can complain about what I was there when it was first discussed with the newspaper industry and the news industry, and one of the Google executives who was there, not Richard, just said, "You guys are never going to trust us to do this. Yeah, you need
That's
this,
what happened.
but you're not going to trust doing that."
Yeah.
And that's what happened. They tried to make it open source, but it never fully was. But the truth underlying was still the case. Media companies effed up the web miserably, threw all kinds of crap
That's
on
true.
editorially, plus the ad departments and the technology departments, just horrible, slow, miserable, rotten, irritating pages. So there was a need for an AMP. That wasn't the Messiah to be had, I guess.
And I think that generally people had the attitude, oh, it's just a land grab from Google. It doesn't
really
solve the problem.
wasn't, because it wasn't. That's the thing. People assume Google
Right.
has these land grabs. They got plenty of land.
Right.
Like they don't need news. They don't need AMP. they got plenty of land, but it didn't matter.
It solved a problem for Google. I think it didn't solve enough of a problem
Yes.
for everybody else in the way it
True.
was implemented.
Well, and that was the real problem was, the newspapers weren't seeing the revenue. It was hiding who was looking at their stuff. Google was getting all that information, not the newspapers. YouTube advertising revenue, $6.87 billion. Wall Street's mad because they thought it would be more. Sounds
Per
like
quarter,
it's...
yeah?
per quarter. Yeah, that's important to say. Per quarter.
And they were fools to have bought it for, what was it, 1.6 billion?
Yeah. No, it's definitely generating for them. They've announced they're going to start putting ads on YouTube. What do they call it? The shorts. Their competition with TikTok.
Oh, that's that new thing.
Yeah, it's their
I haven't
TikTok.
figured that out yet.
And it confirms, I think, what some of what you just said, which is TikTok must be hurting them a little bit. Ad growth revenue slowing, but not shrinking. Google told shareholders, YouTube Shorts is doing great. Don't worry about TikTok. It's not all about TikTok. Let's see. That was a headline from TechCrunch. Ruth Porat, the CFO, said the slower rate of growth is more a reflection of last year's unprecedented gains. That may be true, too. I mean, even Netflix, which had a terrible quarter, but that was coming off of a gigantic growth through pandemic. Maybe that's the thing. Ad revenue in 2021 Q1 had increased 49% on YouTube.
That's not
Well, reality is now competing with YouTube. You can go out and do real things. Go into concert halls.
We can go
and,
out,
see people. So
Right, that too.
Competition from reality hurts YouTube revenues. That's a good headline.
Right. I hardly used YouTube. I felt like for general viewing before the pandemic, and now I feel like it's kind of the first stop that we put on the agenda, partly because we watch a lot of UK TV shows that are available through it, but also it just it has gotten to know us maybe a little too well, although my 15-year-old and I joke all the time. We were watching something last night, and the ads it threw up were like, I don't need that medication, we're not investing in that, we don't buy cars like that. And we're like, oh, this is good. YouTube completely doesn't know who we are. Like whatever they're doing for personalization, they've gotten us totally
You know what I
wrong,
find
so
interesting,
that's
though,
great.
Glenn? That's exactly the same ads I get on CNN. So
interesting.
it's the same advertisers. It's big pharma. It's automotive.
Yeah.
And actually, in a way, that's a real story because for a long time, digital, and I know this from podcasting, was looked down upon by brand advertisers. They said, oh, no, you can't do brand advertising on digital.
Scale.
Yeah, at scale. Yeah.
So, by the way, back to your point, though, about YouTube, there's a paper that just came out from colleagues at CUNY, by the way, and others, that debunks the YouTube rabbit hole argument and says that the worst stuff is viewed little by few people, and they come to it not from the algorithm, they come to it from outside links.
Oh.
It's just a serving platform for the far right, which is interesting too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Research facts.
Yeah, that's I don't. Is that facts? Is that facts? I don't know.
It's researchers.
Okay,
Jeez.
must be true.
Better than us.
Well, it's better. Yeah, I mean, my empirical research is Google's best known for bikini-rich content, but that's just me.
Well, that's your problem.
I never see any of that. I don't know what you're watching, man.
Hey, by the way, this is, I'm serious about this. So the last week, people have been talking about how there's porn on Twitter. I have never seen any porn on Twitter. Does it think I'm Presbyterian still?
You just have to look for it. They don't stop it. They don't stop it. So you have to. That's actually there's a really good example of why Twitter works. You follow who you want to follow.
I've never seen an inch of bare flesh on Twitter.
Well, I'll send you a list.
No.
It only comes up if you search for certain things, and I think flong is one of them, by the way, you'll get a lot of pornography. Seems like innocuous terms. And then flong means something in Tagalog, I think, because I see it come up in posts from people from the Philippines, and I'm like, I don't know what flong means, but it's not what I think.
Well, and that's an Elon says free speech, right? Well, pornography is protected by free speech. Spam is protected by free speech. A lot of things that Elon may not want on his platform are protected by free speech. So it's a very, Tumblr got rid of the porn.
Because which hurt it immensely because it wasn't really porn. It was alternative creation. That's the problem. It was misinterpreted as porn.
I mean, you could go and find naked pictures of people. I mean, if that's what you were looking for. I don't know.
Yeah, if you look at where the sex workers go, you can see what's going on with the platform because they're the least tolerated people on the planet.
Yes, that's right.
So when a platform, you'd think they might start with Nazis and fascists and people who want to overthrow governments and commit violence, but they usually start with sex workers and trans people and people who lack a strong political voice in the country in which they live. And so that's again, sex workers are always the canary in the coal mine. It's like, we have to stop this problem, so we're going to ban sex workers, and that will fix our platform and
hurt the sex workers every time.
That's
Send
right.
them back into the arms of pimps and make their lives worse.
So like the back page thing, like all these things that are ostensibly they're all about their puritanism as opposed to providing if they're you have to provide other opportunities for people if you want to do things you don't ban them from a platform in order to protect them. But it tells us what else is coming on a platform because it's always first the weakest people with the least voice and who will defend them the least, and then upwards from there.
Well, isn't Congress now looking at essentially a return of Sosta and Festa? I'm trying to remember what the
I think
latest...
it's always simmering there because it's very easy to sell your constituents that you're doing something if you tell them you're banning people from something. And, I mean, this is why there's been all the cries of pedophilia and grooming and so forth. It's a very emotional appeal, and
and who's for that? Nobody's for that.
That's right. It's a very easy. I'm not but if you're old enough as we are, and you remember the Satanism panic of the 80s, this is a replay of that, just at its incredibly magnified scale. But it's exactly the same playbook and exactly as ridiculous.
It was daycare, right? Everybody thought that.
People, they're eating babies, and I'm like, where are the babies who are missing?
Yeah.
Where are the babies
whose
who are
babies exactly?
This is, I did this piece for Boing Boing a few years ago because people were throwing around a number about human trafficking. And if you dig into the numbers, they said there's X hundreds of thousands of children go missing a year. When you look at the numbers, missing can be as little as 4 hours. It can be that somebody didn't come home at the time expected and was reported briefly. And when you dig down to it, there are something like under 200 incidents a year in which a child goes missing because a stranger is involved. It's almost always people they know, almost always close family members, often a custodial dispute, or they got lost, stayed at school long, or a parent didn't realize they were out. And so we have this incredible national panic. Lenore Skenazy's been a great voice on that. And she's, I think, libertarian maybe in focus, but she's a very interesting person. Always loved her NPR commentary. But she's been a great voice and she did that TV series, even the reality show about how do you get parents to understand the actual risk instead of these risks that poke up. But it's so easy, so primal to say, my child could get hurt. There are 600,000 children go missing each year. Footnote, well, really, it's only 200 or something. Right. And you listen to that top number and you keep your children indoors.
But look at the long-term consequences. Kids don't play outside anymore because of stranger danger. I saw some kids playing outside the other day. I was stunned. We used
Listen,
to
we give our kids a box of broken glass, just like my parents gave me, and we put them in the back seat and drive around. I don't know what you're.
Yeah. And what about the razor blades and the apples on Halloween night? I got to ask you.
That's my favorite.
My parents would go to parties, and my sister and I would sleep in the back of the station wagon, unlocked, parked out front, while they drank and then drove home after a few martinis.
And there were no seatbelts.
Their story is they were driving with a drink in one hand and a cigarette in the other, and using their elbows to steer. Look how we came out. We're fine.
Yeah, we survived.
Oh no, it's but yeah, there is the balance. I live in Seattle, which you think of as a pretty calm city, and we didn't let our kids play outside much because we're in kind of a fairly residential part of Seattle, and the streets are too dangerous from cars.
Honestly, that's the biggest. For me, the biggest threat to humanity is cars. For so many reasons is cars. For so many reasons.
We're safer in the street. We would let our kids run free if the roads, if people didn't drive, in our 25-mile-an-hour.
We're very
60.
excited in San Francisco. And Jeff, I know you drove JFK Boulevard through Golden Gate Park. Unbelievably, in a very controversial vote, they just voted to close it to automotive traffic forever.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
Huge.
Yeah.
And it was extremely controversial. It leads all the way through, Golden Gate Park.
Incredible.
It will make the park 100 times better for roller skaters, bicyclists,
There'll
pedestrians.
be 10 times the people out there.
There absolutely will.
We have a long stretch in Seattle, Lake Washington Boulevard, that they close in the summer at certain points for biking only days. And during the pandemic, they put on all these safe streets where they closed off city streets except for local residents and put bumps in and so forth. And they've been doing incredible traffic calming. And I just think it hasn't, because of the reduced traffic volume we have, which may be forever. Maybe not that it won't ever go back up. But
that's what happened. We all saw how great it was in pandemic, right?
Right. If 25% of workers are now working from home 1 to 5 days a week,
stay that way. Yeah.
You don't need as much. Maybe we'll become the Netherlands.
Yeah. Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
Oh, man.
I want to ride my bike everywhere. I really do. And it's too dangerous. I'm too scared to. I just don't dare.
You have driven it to the studio.
I used to ride to work until I saw a ghost bike on the bridge that I cross over every time. A guy got squished. It was broad daylight. A driver, elderly driver who was on meds, veered over, crushed the guy on the bridge. There's very little bike path there, so it is a very dangerous crossing point. I saw that ghost bike, I said, and I haven't ridden my bike since.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It breaks my heart. I love it.
Sad.
Is my hope that I know I only have a few years left, but in my lifetime, we might be able to get rid of personal car ownership so I can ride my bike when I am 90. I am hoping. I'm praying. Google says, Sundar Pichai says, the Pixel 6 is the fastest selling Pixel ever, which is faint praise indeed.
Much,
yes. They also said that, and this is probably of more interest and maybe to help the stock price, they are going to do a $70 billion buyback of Alphabet stock.
Oh.
So
before or after the split?
Let me see. They didn't say when they were going to do it. So did the split happen?
Oh, maybe it did already.
Yeah.
I hate buybacks. Buybacks are the worst thing.
I agree.
Well, shareholders like it because it increases their value, but it does kind of obscure the real value of a company.
With antitrust going after them, what can they buy that's not going to get them in trouble?
Right.
Yes.
Apple has done very well with its stock. I mean, look at Apple's stock. Because they have a huge trove of cash and they've got nothing better to do with it. So they buy back their shares. $70 billion. Alphabet purchased more of its own stock than any other public company last year except for Apple. So it was Apple, Alphabet, and then Meta.
I agree with Glenn. Those resources could build that next Twitter. They could give us back.
Well, why is it okay? So it's bad because you should put it into R&D. Is that why it's bad?
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah. It's not productive. It does reward shareholders, but you could do a special dividend if you wanted to reward shareholders instead of trying to. I mean, they're always playing games with stock price because even though stock price, if Apple's stock were $1,000 a share, it shouldn't be. The stock shouldn't go up if there's a stock split, and it does. Right. That's the weird part of
shareholders. The stock market's not rational necessarily.
So that's part of it. So that's part of it as well as they want to increase. They'd like to tweak their numbers by having fewer outstanding shares.
Facebook shares also spiked on better than expected quarterly earnings. The stock
nobody expected anything from Facebook.
Anything.
It was going to be awful.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that intraday jump. 18% in extended trading today.
Jesus.
Earnings topped estimates. Revenue disappointing though. Again, this is beating all you got to do is beat the analyst estimates and everybody's happy. Earnings per share $2.72 versus $2.56 expected. Revenue $27.91 billion versus $28.2. Daily active users 1.96 billion.
Almost there. Almost.
So close to 2. Monthly active users 2.94 billion. ARPU, which everybody talks about now, ARPU, which is the average revenue per user, $9.54, which also beat the street. Yeah. So, good news for Meta. I'm having a hard time calling it Alphabet and Meta.
Yeah, I am too.
I just can't.
You don't want to call Square Block now or something?
Block.
Or,
and, of course, Jack's title is Blockhead.
Yeah, Blockhead.
I am the Blockhead, the head of Block.
They'd like to give us something to talk about. The issue with Meta, I think, as it always is that they make their ARPU is a great number to look at. If you dig out to the regional numbers, they make a lot of money from people in North America, a bit of money from people in Europe, and a lot of nothing. I mean, very, very little from people in the rest of the world. And they don't seem to have been able to improve that over time. It remains kind of in that division. So their growth has to come from markets that are smaller and more fully established. And, that's going to be their long-term problem, especially as they have this, the negative pressure against advertising, against how they're governed. Sheryl Sandberg, against Sheryl Sandberg personally, I think, against Zuckerberg. Unlike Twitter, Facebook has classes of shares, though, so Zuckerberg can never
lose his control
of Facebook. Yeah. Twitter has no classes of share. I looked this up when Musk was talking about taking ownership.
I did too. It's so funny that you said that. I did the same thing.
Well, they did not build the company that way. They built it. What I think classes of shares for publicly held companies without very specific rules should be not within the regulations, because then it doesn't give shareholders a way to influence or change the direction of a company ever. It feels like it's.
We're going to give you some shares in the company. We're not asking for your opinion, though.
Yeah.
We just want, you can participate in our success, but don't tell us what to do.
Your votes are worth 1/10 of ours, or 20th, but
Google does that too. Alphabet did that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good strategy for the founders.
That's who does it.
It's great.
When we met last 1 week ago, we were saying, oh boy, it's too bad about CNN Plus. The next day, it closed almost as fast. It almost went down as fast as Quibi, maybe faster, actually. I think it's somebody said it was 8 Scaramucci's. It was very quick.
I feel really bad for them because
I do too.
I don't have. It's like there's a lot of media sites and media companies and everything that I might be negative about. Like, do I want them to succeed? Do I think CNN? I'm pretty neutral about. I think they do good reporting. They're interesting, and they hired interesting people. A lot of people stake their careers. I'm moving. I'm changing jobs.
That's where I feel bad.
And then it's like not as a corporate. And then it's but you understand the time. I kept reading the timeline. I'm like, how did this happen? It's like, because they were actually, unlike an Elon Musk. Allegedly, they were completely scrupulous about not talking during the period before the merger closed, when they weren't supposed to talk about significant business stuff.
They call it gun jumping. Oddly enough.
And they didn't. They did the right thing, and everyone involved in it did the right thing. And for CNN, they should have launched that service before the merger, because they had invested in it, and it was a smart long-term move that they couldn't predict.
But Discovery didn't want them to do it. Discovery couldn't tell them that. The minute Discovery comes in, looks at the financials, they said, "Okay, now you're closing it."
Yeah.
It's very sad for the personnel involved. CNN's trying to find a place for a lot of them. I'm sure Chris Wallace will land on his feet. I'm not exactly crying for him.
Think he'll have a problem.
No, but a lot of producers.
There.
Yeah, a lot of producers, a lot of talent, I think also when you looked at CNN Plus and saw that there was no live news, it was like, well, why would I want that? I mean, purely as a customer.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot there, but I guess they promoted it so much and hadn't built out a a service. I mean, honestly, isn't that the Fox News Plus, whatever they call it? It's pretty thin too. There's only a few original shows.
I don't subscribe to that either.
I've not been a subscriber. I've read about people who've subscribed to test it out, but a lot of the news services seem to be kind of thin, and I don't know who their audience.
Well, we've talked about this. Of course, they don't want to offend the MSOs, the cable operators, who are their bread and butter. Can't. So they cannot, cannibalize the real product, even though streaming is the future, and they know it. So they're kind of it's kind of planting a flag. It's putting a bookmark saying we'll be here.
Paywall fetishism, though. It's also everybody's got to have a paywall, and sorry, not all of you are worth the paywall.
I think Discovery actually is correct in saying, look, we're going to have HBO Max. It's going to be everything, because people don't want 5 different streaming services.
Yes. I agree.
We're going to make one that does it all. And, I think they'll put live news on HBO Max, I betcha. And that'll be something you'll want, plus all the other stuff.
Which sounds great.
Somebody who is a big winner, oddly enough, somebody you all know very well, Christina Warren. NPR story. NPR story about Christina. She collects swag from companies that have fallen, that have failed. There she is in a Movie Pass T-shirt. There it is, the CNN Plus pop socket. Here is, she's also in a T-shirt from, you might not recognize it, that's the Fire Festival.
Fire.
So good on you, Christina. Big story on NPR.
This is how, look, if you know how to sell a story, I don't know if she called up or they saw posts, probably saw her tweets, but it's, if you're there at the right moment, you're like, I collect CNN swag. They're like, CNN Plus swag. They're like, oh, that's a great
perfect timing.
Yeah.
But you know what she doesn't have? She doesn't have her white whale is Theranos. She needs Theranos gear. So anybody listening,
if you can help Christina, get a Theranos mug or a cozy, anything. Let's help it. A ballpoint pen. She said, I hope someday I'll be able to get something, whether it's like a mug. I would even take a pen, like a ballpoint pen.
Oh my gosh. I've got, just off camera here, I have a Q cat. Actually, I have 2.
Oh, I have a few of those too. Yeah,
I got one.
They're like old mouse droppings, unfortunately.
They really are.
And I've got a NASBAG tag, which was a Wi-Fi device that was supposed to indicate the mood of other people. You'd plug it in, it would glow, and its ears would move. It's very strange. It looked like a rabbit. Very strange.
Oh, Lord.
I
have the News Cube, which was using the vertical blanking interval to send news into your PC.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Wow. Let's see. I think we can wrap it up. But there are about 3,000 stories in this here that we didn't do. But I mean, we had a big thing to talk about. Google rolls out a new cookie rejection banner in Europe. Clearly fed up, as most of us are, with this. Geez Louise. So now they did a redesign after years of pressure from data protection watchdogs. The new banner will basically say, no, don't screw it all. Turn off all cookies.
Is there a big screw it button on the middle of the screen? Is that what you're saying?
Soon, anyone visiting search and YouTube in Europe while signed out or incognito mode will see a new cookie consent choice. It'll start in France and then be extended to the rest of the EU as well as UK and Switzerland. Man, we're starting to see, like, in fact, we have passive-aggressive cookie banners saying things like, I saw one the other day. Oh, it was hysterical. It's something like, yeah, we have cookies. What about it?
You want a piece of me?
Yeah, come and get me. Okay, and then you have to press OK, right? That's all you have to do.
I noticed that ad blockers are failing because on a lot of sites now, they used to say, disable your ad blocker and continue. There's a button on the bottom. It's a little bit of a dark pattern, and it says, continue without ad blocker. And you click continue without ad blocker, and it just goes to the site. And I only, I try to use it sparingly because I want sites that are ad supported to make money from me. I turn it on sites that my browser crashes or they're auto playing video, and I really try to customize it. I try not to be, So I only do it in extremis, and the one I have will let ads through that are good ads that aren't like trying to do stuff to me. So when that comes up, I'm like, come on, I want to give you my eyeballs. I gave you my eyeballs. Don't tear them out of my face, please.
This is a story I actually haven't done yet, but I feel safe doing it with you guys, Jeff Jarvis, Glenn Fleischman. It's great to have you both. There's a lot lot going on in this piece.
Man. Oh,
So
holy
the Wall
cow,
Street
folks.
Journal has a piece saying Meta, their arch enemy, Sheryl Sandberg, pressured the Daily Mail, another Murdoch product, right? Am I right?
No. Another
Another Murdoch competitor, okay, to drop the reporting on Bobby Kotick, who's the CEO of Activision, Blizzard Activision. And I guess she was dating Kotick at the time.
Yes.
So part of a campaign to persuade the tabloid to shelve an article exposing Kotick, of course, who is right now in a lot of hot water over harassment at Activision. In 2016 and 2019. See, this is why I didn't want to do this story, because it's true, right? But is it a hit piece from Murdoch? I don't know.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah. I mean, all the characters here, particularly the media players. I mean,
Everybody's entangled. Yeah.
Yeah, you have fleas. You got fleas on them.
Okay, so there you go. I've read the story. You can read it if you want to know more. But this is really important now in this media landscape. You have to look at it and say, well, it's the Journal. It's owned by Murdoch. Who has what? That's too bad that we have to do that now. This is why I don't like Musk buying Twitter. I don't want Bezos to own the Post. I love it that these people are patrons of good journalism. I don't want them to run the shop, though. Somehow.
So the infamous Washington Post, the infamous Wall Street Journal editorial page is all gung ho on guess who buying Twitter.
They like the idea.
They love it. They love it. Of course they do.
But you know what the ultimate, I don't want to go back to Musk. You know the ultimate thing would be, he buys Twitter, the deal goes through, and then he says, I'm not bringing you back at all. You all suck. And it would be the best troll for him to not
It would be.
re-enable those folks to come
I
back.
think the chances of that are as close to zero as possible.
No, there's zero. There's zero. But boy, it would be a great. Let's convince
But he's
him to do it.
dreaming. Let the man dream.
Dream on,
We'll
Glenn.
Let him dream.
We'll do a
Dream
Twitter
on.
poll because
He's in a metaverse. Let him be there. It's okay.
I think we have done everything we need to do. I want to talk more about typefaces, to be honest with you, but I don't think the audience will tolerate a bit more of that. But you know what? Here's my proposal. We will have Glenn back very, very soon. You're just great,
Love
Glenn.
that.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be
Have you
on.
ever been on any of our shows?
This is going to be the funniest question you ever asked, and I'm going to need to run a clip of this for the Incomparable, because we do a game show at the Incomparable, and every 2 weeks, and it's a different thing. We do some classic games, some like Trivial Pursuit things and things like, but not Family Feud. And there's a game that Lex Friedman, who now works for Amazon, by the way, in the podcast division, he came up with a game called Friendly Competition, and it's people, he asks them to do things. So we have to do some tasks beforehand, and then it's just a silly game, and we sort of competing for meeting his inscrutable rules. And one of the rounds, I'm gonna slip because the episode isn't out yet, was called #Glenning, which is what people call me whenever I name drop some of the people I know. And he said one of the questions was, so the round was, which podcast has Glenn been on? And there were points off for non-uniqueness. And someone put Twit. And they said, have you ever been on This Week in Tech? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. And they're like, it's you, don't you know? I'm like, I think I've been asked. I haven't been well set up for video before, I'll be honest. This is the first video podcast event I've been on because I'm finally set with lighting.
You look.
so
It looks
forth.
the image is phenomenal. Like I said, 10 out of 10 on the room rating.
I'll get the duct tape fixed. But anyway, so it was literally a question. What you just asked me was literally a question, and we had to research it during the show.
You didn't know.
And I think what's happened is I think I've been asked to be on Thank You on multiple occasions over the years. And I think I've been, I'm not really set up with video yet. So I finally am. And that's why Jeff said, hey. And I said,
I was thrilled because I thought you had something against me. So
No. I thought you guys might be like, he keeps saying no. Why does he keep saying no? He must hate us.
All right.
No, I just don't have video.
I have actually, I think you were on when Jason Snell hosted.
No, I
for
don't
me,
think so.
no. Okay,
I think I've been mentioned.
Mentioned,
if you search,
but not
I show up
on.
in transcripts.
Yes, you're in transcripts.
My name has been taken. What's the opposite of vain? I don't know.
Wait a minute. You are, in fact, in the transcripts here.
Isn't that
Glenn
funny?
Fleischman wrote a piece on Boing Boing this week, says Jason.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
That's what's confusing. And in my mind, too, I haven't been on that many different podcasts. I used to have a regular gig on a local radio station and so forth. And I do a lot of incomparable stuff and was the host of the Macworld podcast for a few years, several years ago. And anyway, it is just funny that I'm like, all right, now I know you two have encountered the same problem. I have officially done so many things in my life that are different. I can't remember all the things I did or if I did something.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
An obvious question. Have you been on This Week in Tech?
Well, you think I would know? So the fact that I asked you is exactly the same problem. Neither of us knows.
10,000 shows. I'm not sure if you can remember
Nobody
them all.
remembers. Well, Glenn, I am deeply sincere. You're going to be back, and back as often as you will do it, because you're fantastic.
Pleasure. Let me come back and talk about USB-C cables. That's my latest book is about.
Oh, my God. We were
sorting out cables.
We just spent a half an hour talking about it on Mac Break Weekly.
Oh, my God.
Because it's a nightmare.
You know, I write the Mac 911 column for Macworld, and so I get it's the best thing to write because in this world, I can't cure cancer. I'm not a medical researcher. I'm not I can't help people directly with their bodies or disease or maybe fighting war. Those aren't my specialties. But I can answer questions about Macs and iPhones. So I get these emails from people. I have an ex-boyfriend who's looking at stuff on my phone, and I'll write back. I'm like, here is an answer. And they're like, thank you. I'm like, oh my God, I made somebody's life a tiny bit better. But cables, people write in more about.
Oh, yeah.
Cables and ports and standards, anything else.
It's
I wrote a whole
nightmare.
book for the Take Control book series, a whole book about cables, if you can believe that. So
we were talking about it yesterday. It's a nightmare. Benson Leong, who is the Google engineer who was doing all of the checks on all of these cables, is actually on our Twit social Mastodon instance. And I was a little starstruck. I said, Benson Leong. So
he knows more about the standard.
He knows a lot about this stuff. This is what is part of his job at Google. So and he had the machinery to test these things.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah,
that's where people are like, I have a cable. I don't know what it does. How do I tell? And
How
I'm like,
do you know?
Plug it in.
No.
You got to plug it in and see what doesn't work. And which is doesn't feel modern.
It came up because we were showing the Apple has a $159 Thunderbolt 4 cable, and we were showing the teardown of it, and it's got 8 chips in it. It's huge. It's this hugely sophisticated device earning its price. And so we started talking about, well, what do you get for a $20 Thunderbolt 4 cable compared to that?
Oh,
and,
you can get a good one now. It's can I mention a brand name?
Yeah.
I'm not sponsored by them. It's Otherworld Computing makes now.
Yes.
Let's see if I can.
I mentioned that one. It's like $40. Yeah.
It's they have it's 27 for a really short one up to 59. I want to say.
I trust OWC.
6.6. Yeah, I bought a lot of stuff from them. I have a pile of them because I was trying to sort that out. But yeah, it's if you get a Thunderbolt 4 USB 4 cable, you can be in good shape. But it's funny because
that's what we concluded is that from now on, just buy Thunderbolt 4 cables because they're going to do it all.
Now they're affordable.
Yeah.
Now they're affordable, and why not?
Yeah. All right, let's take a little break. And Glenn, we have a tradition at the end of the show, pick of the week. Just something, anything. It could be a typeface.
It could be a story, or it could be something in your collection there too.
Yeah, something for your anything you want, a book, whatever you want, a TV show you like. Podcast you'd like to be on, whatever you want.
A rant.
Before we do that, though, I do want to talk about the biggest change in sleep technology I have ever experienced. We talk a lot about sleep. You know, Micah Sargent did a podcast about sleep for a long time. He subscribes to the Journal of Sleep Pathology or whatever, and is very interested in sleep. And I've been talking to him about this. Kevin Rose was the guy who turned me on to it. It's called 8 Sleep. Amy Webb got it when she was on with Kevin Rose. She said, Leo, you have to get this. You can get it as a mattress, or what we did at home, we got the Pod Pro cover. We got it about 6 months ago. In fact, Jeff remembers the story of me putting it on wrong. There is a very good video, I hasten to add, on the 8 Sleep site. If I had watched it, I would have been able to put it on right. Now, what does this do? It is not a heating pad. It is a heating and cooling. It's not even a pad, a heating and cooling cover that can go as low as 55 degrees, which is pretty chilly on a hot night. I can't wait to a hot summer night and try that. To 110 degrees, which is definitely hot, a heating pad hot, and anywhere in between. Here's the thing. It's connected to sensors. It does biometric tracking. It knows the temperature of the room, and it will adjust the temperature of your bed as you sleep, and it will continue to adjust it to give you the best night's sleep you ever had. And I can promise it really works. I have never slept better than with the 8 Sleep. I need not say, I think, sleep is the holy grail for all of us. It is nature's gentle nurse. It is the ultimate game changer in your life. Yet 30% of Americans struggle with sleep, and temperature is one of the main reasons why. Ever wake up sweaty at night? That's the worst. Or freezing cold? Our bodies are designed biologically to go to bed when it's warm. You know, you put the fire out, get in bed. It slowly cools off during the night until the morning. And that is what we expect. And yet we live in such climate-controlled circumstances, we don't actually experience that. So the 8 Sleep does that, and you can set it. Lisa sets it a little higher than I do. By the way, if you get, one for a double bed, or we have a king, there are 2 sides. So Lisa gets her settings completely independent of my settings. Dynamic cooling and heating with biometric tracking. Can go on any mattress. It watches your sleep, and it gets you into a deep sleep and then gets you out of it. In fact, I have it set to warm up when I have to wake up in the morning. It's the best alarm I've ever had. No sound, nothing. It's very quiet. I feel warm, and I go, okay, I'm ready. 8 Sleep users fall asleep 32% faster, reduce sleep interruptions by 40%, and get overall more restful sleep. Imagine 30% more deep sleep. What could you do with that? You just would feel a lot better throughout the day. I will vouch for this because we've been using it for 6 months. And I'll tell you what, I'm never stopping. I'm never not going to use this. Go to 8sleep, EIGHTSLEEP.com/twig. Check out the Pod Pro cover. You'll save $150 at checkout if you go to that special address, so please do that. They also then know that you saw it here, and that helps us a lot. 8sleep. EIGHT, 8sleep.com/twig. I like to, as part of this ad, and I have not done this yet today, check my sleep score just to see. And it's down a little bit. It's 92% sleep fitness. But I have to tell you, as somebody who's lived the last 10 years at 60 and 70%, that is awfully good. You can see the temperatures. It has a lot of information in here. Heart rate variability. You have complete control with the app on your temp dial, so I could turn the bed on now if I wanted to get in and get warm, and you can see how it cycles through the temperatures from 10 p.m., my bedtime, until wake-up time around 8 a.m. Yes, I like a lot of sleep. 92% sleep. Let me tell you something. It feels really good. It feels really good. In fact, last time I did the ad, it was 99%, which I have never in my life ever had before. I can't recommend it more highly. The Pod Pro cover, go to 8sleep.com/twig, save $150 at checkout. 8 Sleep currently ships within the U.S., Canada, and the U.K. 8sleep.com/twig. Speaking of Amy Webb, we wanted to have her on the show because we knew Ant wouldn't be here this week. She said, unfortunately, she was doing a Stern School alumni event tonight. Couldn't be here. She will be here soon because I have got to hear what she thinks about all of this. I think increasingly, the sense I get is the billionaires are out of control. And it's time really as a country to think about, and maybe as the world to think about, do we need these oligarchs?
I still like Glenn's Finland, the Fleischmann Finland trip.
What's that? Tell me about that.
But you get your driving if you have a driving infraction.
Oh, that one. Yeah. Percentage of your yeah.
So if Jeff Bezos jaywalks in Seattle, he'd have to pay $1 billion. I think this would be a good deal.
Yes. Now, jaywalking, we have to understand, was invented by the car industry to penalize pedestrians.
I'm sorry.
So we will not give him a fine for jaywalking. That's not right.
That is some good history. I think that's great. That's great. Just watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit for more information about the demise of cars.
I get all my history from Roger Rabbit. Yeah. No, actually, I have been following a subreddit. I am propagandized by Reddit, but I think in a beneficial way. Anti-work has taught me how many awful bosses there are in the world. There's a /r/ I can't say it on a impolite company, F cars, that really makes a strong case for getting rid of private car ownership. We need obviously trucks, we need conveyances, but private car ownership is not. It's not good for this world, nor are oligarchs. Glenn, do you have a pick for us?
Yeah, this is a site I read every day. It's called Web3 is Going Just Great.
I love this site.
I figured you would know this. And I don't know why. Okay, so there are positive joys in this world. There's things that we celebrate because we love them. We see a picture of a puppy. We see Ukrainian people rebuilding their cities already after the Russian forces have moved on. Incredible things that bring us joy in different ways. Then there's Schadenfreude, and we've been talking a lot of German this episode. But Schadenfreude is that guilty joy you have, a joy at misfortune. My German teacher in college said Schadenfreude is when you see someone, your enemy, wearing a bowler hat. The enemy wearing the bowler hat is the best part. Crossing the street, their bowler hat flies off and is crushed by a passing car.
Schadenfreude.
The feeling you feel then is Schadenfreude, right? So for
An
my
ironic bowler hat is the best part of that. Yes,
that's right. So if I want to go lay back and just relax in a pool of Schadenfreude, I go to Web3 is going just great because every day I want to distinguish. I feel bad for the people who are being bilked by cryptocurrency scammers and NFT scammers because most of the coverage is how this or that coin drop or NFT or new cryptocurrency or whatever, how it's gone belly up and how all the money is gone, all the crypto is drained out, or there was a bug and everyone's money was stolen. And I feel terrible for the people who got scammed into this.
Yes.
Some of them are wealthy. A lot of people.
I don't mind if Bitcoin bros get scammed. In fact, a little Schadenfreude there. But there are a lot. But the whole purpose of their promotion is to get normal people to sink money into it so they can get out.
Yeah, so I think this cadence of a blowing kazoo that Molly does, where it's just like at the funeral, it's like it's the performance that tells you can't believe in this stuff because here is a drumbeat of everything, the billions of dollars that are being stolen all the time. So I love this site in a perverse way, and Molly is also great on Twitter. I think she's Molly 0xFFF, which is a great hexadecimal programming joke on Twitter, and she's just a terrific person.
Is her last name White or Black?
Her last name is White. Molly White. And she, that's a clever. I didn't catch that.
Oh, you didn't know what XFFF?
No, I wasn't thinking about
was?
that.
Yeah.
That's a great.
That's the hex of her last name.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect. But she, like David Gerard's another person who is extremely expert in the topic. They would like cryptocurrency or cryptography-based financial stuff to become a reality in some fashion. They're not opposed to it. They're painted often by people who are hypesters that they hate this stuff. They don't. They actually love it. They understand it incredibly well. They just hate what's happening right now, and they're willing to poke holes in it instead of promoting it. And anyway, so
I knew the trouble was afoot when my daughter asked how she could invest in Dogecoin. That's when I knew there was a problem. By the way, Molly, brilliant. She has a thing that I think should be on many websites. It's the grift meter in the lower right-hand corner. You can. It starts at 0, and as you scroll through the losses rolled up by Bitcoin people, the meter goes up as the money goes out.
This, ladies and gentlemen, this is the effedcompany.com.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's F Company 3.0.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, no, it totally.
I love the 8-bit grift meter in the lower right-hand corner. For that reason alone, Web3 is great. That's a very, very good pick.
I love this.
I like it. Jeff, thank you, Glenn. Jeff always gives us a number of the week. Your number this week, Mr. Jones.
So I liked the fact that Reddit. I mean, YouTube gives away money to people to make stuff, and we know that, and we know how that works. But Reddit has just created a $1 million fund to just fund users' best ideas in that Reddit-y way, which is what we need to do. We need to be encouraging and supporting the good stuff and good voice and good creativity. And so I just want to give them a shout out for that.
Yeah. Increasingly, Reddit has become my social network. That and Discord, which I'm in love with. Our Club Twit Discord is a great place to hang. I like our forums. We use Discourse for our forums. That's the twit.community forums. And I have to say, I am now going to really spend a lot more time on Mastodon because one of the...
Where do you... which one?
Ours. We have one.
Like 3 people
we
there.
We have one, Jeff.
Oh, yours.
Twit.social. The reason... one of many reasons that Mastodon is great is Elon Musk could never buy it.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
thousands of independent servers which are all federated together. Jeff, when you join twit.social, I guess this is becoming my pick. When you join, well, I'll show you a couple of things about Mastodon. First of all, we don't call them tweets, we call them toots. So that's very important, okay? You're tooting. And instead of 280 characters, you actually have 500 characters. There are some really nice standards. For instance, you see this toot has a sensitive a content banner on it. Anytime you think an image might offend, you just press that sensitive content button.
About baking? What could it be?
Well, some people don't want
to.
Some people don't want to see pictures of bread.
Oh, that's obscene.
Oh, makes me hungry. Makes me hungry. So you can write your content warning here. Watch out, glutens, or whatever it is on your picture of bread. I like that feature. When you're tooting, you're tooting to the local Mastodon instance, but you're also tooting to anybody who is federated and wants to follow you. So your name is qualified. So my name on Twit Social is @Leo. My global name, though, is @Leo you could show this, @Leo @Twit Social over here. And so you can follow anybody if you know what instance they're on. There also is a search function, so you can quickly find what instance they're on.
Somebody needs to come up and find out who from Twitter. All my Twitter friends are here.
Well, more and more people are going in there,
that's what we need,
which I think maybe is a good sign. It has all the benefits of Twitter, except it's just not as many people in there, and it tends to be somewhat geeky. You should look, though, and there is a long list of Mastodon servers. You may not want to join ours. You may say, well, I want to hang out with a bunch of type nerds. And there may well be a type nerd Mastodon server because
all 7 of us.
Yeah, well, because it's federated. It's easy to start a server. My server only has maybe a few hundred, I think it's actually 1,000 people on it now. You can also, as a server, not federate with servers you don't like. So Gab is on Mastodon as well, but I don't federate with them. So I don't see anything from Gab, and they don't see anything from Twit Social. There are a number of directories of Mastodon servers, but if you don't have a particular preference, then I would suggest you join twit.social. But the point is you can do that anywhere. You can follow anybody anywhere from any server. So you're never really limited. I think it has everything that good about Twitter except for the community, unfortunately.
I think we're going to see a lot of retreating into Discords and Slacks and discourses and Mastodon instances. But actually, it's almost like we're retreating into caves, waiting for the flood to be over or something, right? The weather to change. And
there's a dove on the horizon. Noah must be nearby.
That's right. Where's the mountain?
Quick, get out of the ark.
If we could get, and then someone could build something better.
Request.
Pardon me?
We'll see if.
So I approve them. That's the other thing.
Oh, good.
As a moderator, one of the things I do is I approve them, and it's not so much because I want to keep Donald Trump off my Mastodon, but because there's spammers. All right. So and I can always tell because when you join, I ask you to say something about why you want to join. And when people say, I wish to share news about my fine company, I do not, in fact, let you join.
I said Leo told me to.
Yes, I see that. So
one of the things, the XOXO conference that is, I think, on hiatus right now because of the pandemic. I think in the first year they sold tickets to the general public and they knew they were going to be oversubscribed. They asked everyone who wanted to buy a ticket, there was like a question which was, tell us something you made recently. And they said later, this basically filtered out all the marketing people.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Because the marketing it wasn't that they're not creative, but their orientation wasn't such that they could fill that question out in a way that or at all. And so it deterred. And also, when you call an event Hugs and Kisses, XOXO, it tends to turn people off and want to come and talk.
It's a wonderful event, and I think that's probably one of the reasons.
Great.
When on as you notice, it looks a lot like TweetDeck, Jeff. On the right, you can follow the local timeline, which is just twit.social. Or you could follow the federated timeline, which is a timeline of all the people on all
Do you, as the boss, choose what to federate with?
The default is federate with everybody, and then there are a few. There's really only two.
Then you eliminate some.
Yeah, there's only two I've eliminated.
Now I get it. Now I understand.
In fact, here's something in German. So
I was going to say,
the
Musk effect has secured Digital Courage. Oh, I see. It's a site called The Must Effect. Is a secure digital courage.social. Whether profile and custom. It's gonna. If you want to profile, you're gonna have to pay €1 a month. I think it says.
Nächstes Mal, wir werden die ganze Stunde auf Deutsch sprechen.
Yeah, that's right. It'll be terrible. Be schrecklich für die
I seem to have lost control of the language of this show, which is the first. This is actually a first for my.
Wir können über grotesk sprechen. Ja?
Ja.
Mein Deutsch ist leider sehr schlecht.
We'd love to have you. Twit.social. It is, if you're looking for Twitter, it's not Twitter. But honestly, there's nothing to keep it from being Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. That's the piece is what got me.
If all the people who say we want a community on Black Twitter created a Mastodon instance, that could be it. Where people aren't happy with it is you're not broadcasting to this vast audience, which is frankly with the benefit of this from my point of view.
That's why I like Instagram. I mean, Instagram and Mastodon actually have things in common in a weird way, which is that Instagram, it's not a walled garden or a closed garden, but I don't have to see much on Instagram beyond my chart, and it's great. I see babies and dogs and art and people.
My wife loves Instagram. I can't do it because it used to be every 10th post. Now it's seems much more frequent. There's an ad for something that I'm going to buy, and I don't. I don't want to buy it.
They want me to buy a lot of quick drying epoxy and woodworking equipment, which I don't know why.
Somehow they've decided you're a woodworker.
That's what
I wouldn't be surprised if that's next.
If they offered linotype
you're going to make a Gutenberg press. I know
I'm working with a woodworker. We're making some type-related furniture. Watch Glenn.fun for more.
Type-related furniture. Now I've got to find out more.
It's a funny idea. No photos yet, but we'll see.
I would like to sit in a G chair, please.
Exactly. Yeah,
or an H.
The L chair is very painful, but you can lie down on it at least. You took
the pick of the week, besides twit.social, please come on by. I will be stepping up.
You're not going to do this one, are you? You're not going to do this one.
I am going to do this one.
Oh, no. The one on the rundown?
Yeah. It's Internet Spring Cleaning Time. How to delete Instagram, Facebook, and all your other accounts from Mozilla. Just in case.
Panic.
It's the Firefox blog. Just in case you wanted to get out of these Snapchat, how to delete Twitter, how to delete Google and Amazon, how to delete Venmo, TikTok, and Spotify.
I got suckered.
And then to promote theirs.
The Verge posted an article saying how to delete Twitter, and I thought Elon Musk had responded saying, I'll just go ahead and delete your account for you. And I thought, oh, man, this guy's petty. And I was totally suckered. It was completely a fake account.
That's hysterical.
Oh, you got me. I just felt like something you do.
Do you think Elon will have a button in his house? Well, he doesn't have a house.
Sure.
But they just delete, nuke him from space. Nuke him.
From his cot where he sleeps at Tesla?
On his cot?
Yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap, where does Elon sleep if he doesn't have a house? And he's definitely not sleeping on the factory floor anymore.
I think he just sleeps in super high-end hotels that we don't know about because only the super rich know about those hotels.
That's exactly what it is, right?
Secret hotels?
In the pool house of his favorite oligarch friends.
Does he have a yacht that he borrows?
Yeah. I don't have a house, he says. Oh, I bet he has a few places to stay.
He's got lots of houses.
I think he has somewhere to stay.
He has 8 children, but he doesn't have a house.
Yeah. Notice
8
that.
children.
Notice that. Those children are elsewhere.
Walter Isaacson, was writing his biography.
Yeah, I saw Walter's tweet.
And Walter's already in hagiography over it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what? If you're writing somebody's biography, it would behoove you not to tweet on Twitter about how great your subject is. He said,
sells books.
Elon just bought Twitter, and look at this. It's 10 p.m., and he's over at SpaceX having a meeting about valve design. What a man. I can't wait to write his biography. I didn't know he was writing his biography, but that makes perfect sense now. I get it. He's the guy who did Steve Jobs and Einstein.
Instead of Twitter, we need Peeps, but that's Peepys, Peeps. Not
Samuel. That's the Samuel of Peeps.
Yes.
Yes. Samuel flavored Peeps. Glenn Fleischman, GLENN.fun.
That's me. Thank you.
Wow.
True words.
What a blast to have you on. You will be back.
It's so fun to be on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I hope we haven't bored you. I'm thrilled to have you
This
here.
was a great time.
It's nice to have somebody smart. We need more typesetting nerds. on all of our shows.
This Week in Type.
We could do Last Century in Type. That'd be our show.
This Week in Grotesque.
This Week in Grotesque. Awesome.
There you go.
I'm going to rename this show. It's the same initials. It'd be great. It'd be perfect. Yeah. Somebody said Elon's living in a van down by the river. Thank you, chat room. Thank you, Jeff Jarvis. Wait a minute. I have the card here somewhere.
Oh, no.
The ritual.
Just play the song. Don't do the thing. Just play the song. That's all.
Oh, I got it. Look at it.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
We laminated this.
geez.
We laminated this so that we wouldn't lose it. So I better do it. He is the director of the Townite Center for Entrepreneurial Journalism at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York. Why I haven't memorized that.
So you had a new one before, right?
I think we just upcut it, so it sounded like.
Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't. We could. Anybody wants to submit?
Yeah.
Please, the choral version.
I got
of
a
Craig
whole jingle on Pete Dominic's show. So I mean, a whole long jingle. So you can really.
I'd like one like the floating crap game song from Guys and Dolls. I'd like to hear that version. The oldest established permanent floating Jeff Jarvis in New York.
Keep it, Glenn. Stay cool, Glenn. He's got a Fleischmann in his pocket. He's cool, Glenn.
Fun. Fun.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you to Kathy Gellis. It was great to have her. I think it was an important show. We really wanted to do a good show about this. I don't know if we've resolved anything. I think it's going to be fun to watch, that's for sure, as Elon Musk takes over Twitter. We do This Week in Google every Wednesday, about 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC. If you want to watch live, you can. Is a live stream, audio or video, at live.twit.tv. People who are watching live often like to chat live with other people watching at the same time. We've got a couple of places you could do that. The community-run IRC channel at irc.twit.tv. Always fun. There's also a great Discord. Honestly, I think in many ways, Discord is a social network that could easily replace Twitter. If you're a member of Club Twit, you can get into ours. You do have to be a member, $7 a month. There are other benefits, ad-free versions of all of our shows, access to the Discord, which is, has conversations about all kinds of things, including some special shows like Stacey Higginbotham's book club that's coming up next month. She's doing Neil Stephenson's Termination Shock. That should be a lot of fun. Tomorrow, we're doing behind-the-scenes people at Twit. We're going to interview one of our editors, John Ashley. That's 9 a.m. Pacific tomorrow with Micah Sargent. Scott Wilkinson next week for Cinco de Mayo. Father Robert Balasair the week following. Those are fireside chats with some of our many hosts. Jeff, you did a great one. All of those show up on the Twit Plus feed.
Enjoyed it.
Also available to all members. Twit.tv/clubtwit. It really, it helps us out. I know you hear our shows and you say, oh, you got lots of ads. We do, but ad sales are very rocky. The numbers are down, as are the dollars. So having a subscriber base really helps us continue to do what we want to do and launch new shows. In fact, we launched This Week in Space thanks to our Club Twit members who helped us do that. And we have another show we're working on I think you're going to be very excited about that should be launching in the next few weeks in Club Twit. So if you're not a member, twit.tv/clubtwit. Pac NW, thank you. Welcome. He just joined today. It's great to have you there. That's about it. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on This Week in Google. Bye-bye.
Don't miss All About Android every week. We talk about the latest news, hardware, apps, and now all the developer-y goodness happening in the Android ecosystem. I'm Jason Howell, also joined by Ron Richards, Florence Ion, and our newest co-host on the panel, Wen Tu Dao, who brings her developer chops. Really great stuff. We also invite people from all over the Android ecosystem to talk about this mobile platform we love so much. Join us every Tuesday, All About Android on twit.tv.